The fund is said to give 8 million Kenyans a second chance to access credit at the lowest interest rate. It will offer much needed relief and a new lease of life to millions of Kenyans who could not access credit after having been blacklisted by various credit rating agencies, by offering them loans from as minimum as 500 shillings to as high as 50,000 shillings at 8% prorated basis, or a daily rate of 0.002%. Cooperative and Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Cabinet Secretary Simon Chelugui said all is set for the rollout, with selected Kenyans set to receive money during the trial phase. Remember that Standard Media Group will be bringing you this live from across all networks. Be sure to join us as we let you know what happens with regards to Hustler Fund later in a subsequent news bulletin. But now the National Assembly today is expected to continue with the vetting of Principal Secretary nominees after the court dismissed the case filed by the Law Society of Kenya against the exercise. A total of 29 people among the 51 who had not yet been vetted will appear before the various parliamentary committees. The Speaker of the National Assembly, Moses Wetangula, announced the criteria that will be used today. Those who will appear today include Bello Kipsang and Esther Moria, who will appear before the Education Committee. Former Langata MP Nixon Korir and Charles Hinga will appear before the Lands Committee. Speaker Wetangula gave a deadline of up to Friday this week for the committees involved in selecting the principal secretaries before Parliament goes on the long Christmas and New Year's recess. And President William Ruto's cabinet has resolved to forego 1 month's salary as the individual and collective contribution towards the ongoing state interventions that support Kenyans affected by the drought. The resolution was reached during the third cabinet meeting chaired by the head of state as part of the long-term measures to address the cyclic drought situation and the cost of living. The cabinet, in addition, assessed the food supply situation in the country.
We wanted to show, in a modest way, our solidarity with the rest of Kenyans who are facing such a terrible time with the drought. And we know that so many Kenyans are supporting the cause. So in our small way, we resolved unanimously to forfeit a month's pay as a contribution to the kitty. Actually, it is our first ever salary as this month closes, so I will not be earning a penny of it. There's a kitty that has been put in place, and the whole effort is being coordinated by His Excellency the Deputy President.
The meeting noted that the cost of the nation's staple food maize remains unacceptably high, currently retailing between 180 shillings to 210 for a 2 kg packet of maize flour. The cabinet further noted that harvesting of maize was ongoing across the country. This year's crop estimated to yield about 30 million bags of maize. The cabinet, in light of this result that the farmers' produce will be accorded priority access to the market, the cabinet secretary gets a month's salary of 924,000 shillings, meaning the 22 cabinet secretaries would collectively donate 20 million shillings, 328,000. And the state will import 10 million bags of maize between February and April next year. In a statement, Agriculture CS Mithika Linturi noted that the importation will not take place this year. These as Kenyans and some politicians raised queries over the quick decision to import the produce, yet some farmers have not yet exhausted the grains in their stores. The imports would only follow after the review establishes there are deficits. Linturi said this in a statement to Parliament following a question raised by Pokot South MP David Kosing. The MP said farmers can now be at ease following the clarity by the concerned ministry.
And in short, Honorable Speaker, the minister is saying the threats of 72 hours given by somebody is no more there. So farmers now can sell their maize peacefully. The minister is saying maybe they will review it in February. That is precise, Honorable Speaker. That's a responsible minister. Not the other one who was going around and issuing some unknown threats, including, Speaker, one that he said in my neighbor county, that if you don't sell your maize within 72 hours, you will feed those maize in your dogs, Speaker. That cannot be a responsible minister, Speaker. Now the farmers all over the place now are aware, and this is the house of record. This is the house of the people, that the farmers can sell their maize peacefully until maybe February next year. They can review that and meet next year, Honorable Speaker. Therefore, that statement is very fundamental, and Kenyans now know who is in charge of agriculture.
And Azimio la Umoja, One Kenya coalition leader Raila Odinga has announced that he has called off planned rallies in support of the 4 IEBC commission scheduled to start tomorrow. After meeting with Azimio MPs, Odinga said the parliamentary group had decided to postpone the protest to December 7th in respect of the ongoing national examinations. Odinga also said they won't accept the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee's report. This is Newswire. Dennis Aseda. Good morning.
The Spice Newswire is brought to you by Samsung Galaxy Watch 5 Pro. Go ahead and get yours today. It's your time.
SpiceFM, Nyeri.
The following takes place from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. every weekday on SpiceFM.
Thank you very much, Eric, and it's good to be at the Situation Room.
Always a pleasure coming here. This is the most challenging interview panel in Kenya. You guys are very well informed, and as you can see, Charles today, very philosophical.
To be poor in this country is the greatest sin you can commit, not just from a legal perspective, but from life generally. Yeah. It is very, very skewed.
We've just heard on the floor of Parliament, just most recently, a leader within the ODM saying that Sisi ni ng'ombe is a baba.
Yeah.
Which means that you are willing to be milked dry. Hapo.
You cannot force me to believe. I'll give way. If it's land that I'm told to return to you, I will. Okay? Because the court has said so. But I'll continue saying, watu wamenirusha. That's all that I'm doing.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Good morning. The rain is coming down, and it looks like it's going to be a busy Wednesday. We're in the middle of the week, and traffic is doing that thing that it normally does right about Wednesday. It's building up on Mombasa Road today, slowing down because of the rain that's coming down, quite heavily so. You're going to get out towards Nyeri and roundabouts, and it's going to slow down even more as you're getting into the CBD. Let's take a look at what's happening on Jago Road this morning. Getting out towards Landis, we're going to see a slowdown of traffic as well. It's not really started on the Thika Superhighway. Kangunda Road looks good, connecting to Outer Ring, as does Juja Road and Manyanja Road, and then getting out towards the city. Coming off from Gong Road doesn't look too bad right now. We're just seeing Mombasa Road that slows down a little bit. All right, through the morning, let's see what it's going to look like Wednesday. Hopefully, as those exams end today, let's see what happens through the day. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Let's talk there and try as much as possible to keep things moving this Wednesday.
SpiceFM, Malindi. This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room.
The only way to start your day on this rainy Wednesday. Good morning to you at 8 minutes after 6 o'clock on the 30th of November 2022. And just like that, December is here. It's Christmas. We're going to, do that thing we normally do during Christmas, and the year is over. Boom, flash, bam. Imagine it's happened just like that. How are you? It's pretty chilly this morning, and the rain is coming down. On the last day of November, it looks like we're going to end the month with a bang. And then you may ask, why is the fair lady alone this morning? Where have all the good men gone? C'est la question, no? Good morning, Eric Latif.
Good morning, Nduoko. How are you?
Fine.
Okay. City.
Yeah.
I think Ndu is calling herself fair lady, and she's wondering where all the good men have gone.
Oh dear, what can the matter be? Dear, what can the matter be? Oh dear, what can the matter be?
Have you watched that movie? Did you watch that movie? My Fair Lady? Oh, you're just grunting. Did you watch the movie? Have you watched the movie?
No, I don't watch such movies.
What? Such a what? What's
No.
I don't watch.
Hear me watch zombie movies.
Who killed Captain Alex?
What are those?
Zombie Apocalypse 3. Yes.
And what such things?
You don't?
No.
See, we have something in common.
We have something in common.
How are you doing today?
Me.
You well?
Trying to be, man.
Yeah. We've come to the end of November.
Wasn't it like a beard month for you guys or something like that?
Your beard month.
Something like that, Abi.
No shave November.
Something.
They do that to those who have beard. Hawa wanafanya mambo kama hiyo. Sisi tunawasalimia tu na kuwashangilia. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation. Let me tell you what we'll be discussing today. Today is the 30th of November. Rais will be launching the Hustler Fund. During campaigns, he said, tutakupatia Hustler Fund interest-free.
Kuja tu uchukue pesa ufanye biashara endelee na hii nini.
Yes, bila interest.
Namna gani, my friend?
Iko namna hii. Iko namna hii.
Tutakupea pesa.
Iko namna hii. Na mimi nilisema vile watu husema ya kwamba iko ahadi ya kisiasa. Ukweli wa mambo inakuwaga tofauti mtu akishaingia mamlakani. Kuna ukweli fulani ambayo sasa inakuja ina knock door, inaambia wewe hii pana wezekana. Ile nawezekana ni hii.
Ile ingine ni porojo.
Ile ingine ni yako. So
he did that when he became president. He said, "Atunafikiri unaweza pata pesa ya serikali kwa bure."
Bure.
Kuna
chakula ya bure?
Utapata pesa ya serikali bure.
And you believed me.
You people surely.
So he'll be launching it today, and he's launching one of only four. There are 4 different products in the Hustler Fund, but he's launching one. The thing is, we are waiting to hear what he says about the other 3. Okay? So, to talk about how hustlers can basically sort themselves out, Hustler Fund or not, we'll have somebody who is an expert in micro and small businesses financing. His name is Fred Njogu. He also is a chief operating officer at a company called Correlation Africa. They do a lot of work in the micro and small enterprises sector, where they talk about lending mama mboga, lending to shop owners, kiosks. How do those people access money to be able to keep recapitalizing their business? Yes, we'll be having that conversation with Fred at 7 a.m. At 8 o'clock, we talk about Kenya's debt crisis. Now, yesterday, he's no longer central bank governor. He's now the Treasury CS, Professor Jogona Dungu. He said, we have hit that place. We can't borrow anymore. We have nothing. We've got to play our game smarter now. Kenya's debt crisis from birth to us. Are Kenya Kwanza debt strategies workable? We'll be having 2 people joining us in the studio. John Oduk is a policy, research and advocacy person at the Institute for Social Accountability, TISA. And David Owiro is a research, public policy and advocacy leader in the same institution. They'll be here with us at what time? At 8 o'clock. 9 o'clock, we are still continuing the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, and we'll be talking about protecting survivors of sexual violence. Beatrice Jerry is a strategic litigation advocate at the Center for Rights, Education and Awareness. She'll be here with us at what time? Saa 3. Yoyote ni leo. Kama uamini. Amini usiamini. Shauri yako. Tell us about COVID.
Let me tell you about COVID. If we look at the numbers that are doing the rounds in Kenya today, when the computer decides that it wants to cooperate, 58 new cases from a sample size of 592 gives Kenya a positivity rate of just under 10%, looking at about 9.98 there. 81 recoveries, 0 recorded deaths, yet another day of that. We're looking at the highest numbers in Nairobi, followed by 6 each in Kericho and Nakuru, 4 in Siaya, 3 in Kiambu, Kisumu and Tana River. Homa Bay, Mombasa, Nyamira and Nyeri counties had 2 cases each, while Meru had 1 case. We're looking at global numbers of 646,955,077. The world has realized 6,638,544 deaths, unfortunately. The issues still continue in Beijing. Those protests now have turned, quite interesting because they're not letting go and they're still insisting that, now that we are protesting COVID, how about we protest this government, which you've never had an opportunity to really do. So, all's fair in love and war.
So they're doing it? So they're doing that?
Yeah, they're doing that.
Okay.
Ever since Elon Musk became really involved in the operations of Twitter, they've come back and they said, you see this COVID misinformation policy that Twitter was on about and saying you need to be very careful about the information that you're spreading. You need to do fact checking and just, please don't, or we will block you, or at least, He said, well, you know what? Let's roll back on that. Twitter has rolled back a policy that was aimed at tackling misinformation related to COVID-19 and lending itself to the risk of a potential surge in false claims, even as cases rise in China and some parts of the world. The move also comes amid concerns of Twitter's ability to fight misinformation after it let go about half of its staff, including those involved in content moderation under new boss Elon Musk. Effective the 23rd, Twitter is no longer enforcing COVID-19 misleading information policy, according to an update on its blog page. The measures that Twitter will drop were not immediately clear, but the company did not immediately respond to requests to share information. On the onset, they had stated a number of cases, including labels and warnings, messages on tweets that disputed information about the health crisis, and a framework to have users remove tweets that advanced harmfully false claims related to vaccines. Now, Musk and his buddies are saying,
free speech, man.
Say whatever you need to say, man.
Free speech.
That's what Twitter is all about.
Yeah.
So, if it's ill-informed, misinformed, disinformed, malinformed, doesn't matter.
You decide for yourself.
Inform yourself.
Yeah.
That's what he says.
I'm here for it. 18 minutes after 6. Good morning. Let's take this quick break. Let's take a look at the weather forecast and then we will look at the newspaper headlines. Are you online? Because we are. Please tell us where you tuned in from. We will do the thing that we normally do shortly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. The adults in the room.
I've seen some marriages, relationships, cohabitings struggle because there was no independence of the relationship.
It needs a certain level of intelligence. You need to reach a place where you know yourself. And again, you're not feeding off society.
Whether it is matters of the heart, finances, or work that's weighing on your mind, worry not.
Tune into Adults in the Room every Monday to Friday from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m.
The Adults in the Room will help you stay winning. Only on 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Raining, Nairobi, 15 degrees, highs of 24 today, and we'll see highs of 25. In a clear Nakuru at 13. It's 14 and mostly cloudy in Nyeri, highs of 24 and lows of 12. And we'll go to highs of 24 as well in Eldoret, where it's currently clear at 10. 25 and sunny is what it looks like for this morning's forecast in Mombasa. It's a good highs of 31 and 31 will also be the high realized in Malindi, where it's partly sunny already at 6:19 this morning. Mostly cloudy conditions at 20 in Kisumu, highs of 29, and it'll go to highs of 28 in Kakamega, where it's cloudy at 14. 19 and raining in Kampala, highs of 26. Partly sunny conditions is what Dar es Salaam will see, going to highs of 30 and lows of 24. It's mostly cloudy at 13 in Johannesburg, highs of 26, and it'll go to highs of 32 in a mostly clear Lagos at 25. It's clear at 23 in Kinshasa, highs of 29. Looking at Beijing into Wednesday afternoon, it's currently sunny at -4. We'll see highs of 0 and lows of -8. It's 5 degrees and cloudy in Paris, highs of 8, and we'll see highs of 9 in a cloudy London at 7. Partly cloudy conditions at 5 in New York Tuesday night, coming into the Wednesday rather. We'll see highs of 6 and lows of 4.
Welcome to Spice FM, the best exclusive radio station bringing you the best mix of the best music ever. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4
All right,
Spice.
21 minutes after 6.
Michael?
People are online, right?
Yes. Michael Gitao says, good morning. This chilly one, folks. Indeed it is. Looking forward to great conversations planned. Helakaya Marenya says he's tuned in. And Ondicho is tuned in as well. Robert Tibogo says, good morning. The young Zemboja is tuned in. And he says, Tunakula show Mombasa. Okay. Cleofa says, good morning, lady and gentlemen. Waiting for what's on today's menu. You got it. Hot. John Amasongole says, good morning. Good morning, friends. What's the frequency of Spice in Migori? I'm leaving Margarine for Migori for a 2-month holiday. So what is the frequency? So that when I get there, I will not be off.
Surely. So, kuja pole pole bas.
Do you know what it is?
Yeah, I can only tell you the Kisumu frequency.
Which is 102.5.
102.5.
Okay. So I don't know if it will connect.
Will it go all the way as far as Migori?
Will it? C'est la question.
See, this individual will tell us.
He'll tell us when he gets there and tries 102. Yes. So do this, Simon. Try 102.5 when you get to Migori and tell us if you can connect. Yes? Yes. Beatrice Ngenya says good morning, and Ba Ella says tuned in. Okwach Kitch said the live streams are not working, but why? Why ever? Why?
Ednah, is that true?
Ednah, seriously speaking.
She's sorting it out.
We shall find out. Ednah is a wonder-working woman. She'll tell us what's going on. We see you guys this morning. It is raining in Nairobi and probably other parts of the country, but spirits up. It's going to be a good day, isn't it? Karibu sana, and thanks for joining us.
Everybody, welcome, City.
Right. We are still in the country of Guinea.
Okay.
Whose capital is Ndu?
Conakry.
Thank you very much. It is God who drives away flies from a tailless animal.
It is what?
It is God who drives away flies from a tailless animal.
Anyone without tail.
Okay. It is God who deals with the flies. Okay. Mungu ni wa wanyonge. What?
Wanyonge? I don't understand.
Si watu wamenyongwa.
Is it different?
Yes.
How so?
What was ujiweza? Those who are not weza.
Wadhaifu.
Those who are not pweza.
Na si wale wamekula pweza.
Not pweza. Do.
No?
Now you've taken the discussion to sea creatures, have you?
Yeah, why not?
Go.
Hiya, the Standard Insider. Have you gone to www.standardmedia.co.ke and gotten access to the Standard Insider? This is a new platform by the Standard Group that gives you content tailor-made for you, depending on your interest, what you like. If you like sports, you get more sports. If you like business, you get more business. If you like rumors, you get more rumors. Whatever you like, audio, visual, text, pictorial, kila kitu, you get it through the Standard Insider. Just go to www.standardmedia.co.ke. You can subscribe for as low as 199 shillings a month. And if you do that, you babaya and save 100 bob. What's on the front pages?
On the front page of the Standard today, we are seeing that the Hustler Fund is going to be launched. The good, bad, the ugly. President William Ruto will today launch the fund to assist hustlers access cheap credit. The fund will help many businesses start and flourish. However, it has not been an easy ride to get here. Well, okay. We're looking at those pointers later. Landowners fears after squatters court win. And this is EATC landowners. That story was interesting to look at yesterday. Change of tack. Raila suspends the People's Assembly that was supposed to take place in various parts of the country today. All right. On the nation, the Hustler Fund is finally here. Yay! Looking at other wins. Win for maize farmers. Cabinet pushes imports to next year to give local produce priority. Is that not a song we've been hearing sung for a while? Okay. So, no word on junior high is another story. Anxious candidates and parents wait for announcements as in what's going to happen. We have about 2 months
Oh my
to go.
word.
As in, are we going to, Okay. Treasury says Kenya has no room for fresh borrowing. Akuna. We can't. As you said, there's nothing. We can't.
But we've heard the story before.
23,000 jobs will be lost in the war on nightclubs, a lobbying firm has warned.
23,000 jobs will be lost in the war on nightclubs. Okay. And these are illegally operating nightclubs.
Now, this is very interesting. You use that word illegally. In order for licensure to be given, a law must exist, isn't it? Now, in the revoking of this license, the law in itself then must cease to be in existence.
Have those things been licensed to operate as nightclubs?
That's the question.
Let us start right there.
Have they been licensed to operate as nightclubs, or have they been licensed to operate as
bars and restaurants?
Bars. Because it's very different to operate as a restaurant than it is to operate as a bar.
Yes.
You would have to look at the individual and nightclubs. You would have to look at the individual license that has been given to each operation to see what they've been given the licensure for. Now, each and every one of them, should they have been given the license to operate as nightclubs and bars, then here you would have to touch on the law in order to revoke and bar them from existence. If they have been given the license to operate as restaurants and they are now operating as bars, then yes, they are illegal. Follow
Okay.
me?
And how many jobs are going to be lost?
23,000. Can I give you that story? Oh, wait, let's wait for
Let's
City
see,
to
tell us the front page of the Star.
It is definitely not about what you have just spoken of.
No.
That is a daycare center. It is a nightclub. Raila's central pillars shifting to Gachagua.
That's okay.
Raila central pillars shifting to Gachagua. That's the head of the Star. Mass exodus. Kioni admits many Jubilee members have their feet in UDA.
Now, la question. Have those feet always been in UDA, or have they just realized that their feet
They're
are
moving.
This is, again, not a new phenomenon. These are politicians, and politicians tend to be fleet-footed. So we are not seeing something that is meteoric. We are not seeing something that is earth-shattering. It is normal with our politics. But then there are two, the heading at the top, the Star has headline staring at you, hitting in the face, bold black.
There's the sub.
There's the corner at the top there. Why the IEBC4 snubbed House team hearings. Okay? Petition in court. And then on the side there is one which now this one is a personal
favorite.
No, not favorite. It's disturbing. Okay. P.S. Korir tore my dress and beat me up over food. Wife tells court.
Oh, why did he do that?
I am merely.
These are the words of
the words of Evelyn Koech. Yes, who is the wife of Devolution P.S. Julius Koech. Korir. Yes. That is the headline of the Star.
Okay.
The headline of East African remains the same as yesterday.
As it did on Monday.
Yes.
The Business Daily?
I did find. Had not come. I don't understand this weather. One day you get Business Daily, the other day you get the Star. on a fortunate day you get both.
Call it business once in a while.
No, I will call it business happen pale.
Hiya, Andu.
Yes.
You want to tell us that story, or you tell us about traffic first? It's 6:30.
I'll tell you about traffic first.
Tell us about traffic first, eh? Okay, sawa. So as you tell us about traffic, you'll also tell us about the time. The time using your Samsung Galaxy Watch 5.
The watch See, now I was enjoying these moments when now my heart rate alarm could be set. Then City was feeling a bit jealous. Then he took it from me.
Took the watch.
I don't understand.
Why do you share things
every
like that?
time? Because I was like, look, you know what? The experience.
Sharing accessories. What else are you sharing?
I'm now saying it can also tell my heartbeat, wake me up from my dreams, you know, things like this. City now came and took the thing.
So that he can also.
So that I don't know if you wanted to see
whether
my
he can
dreams.
see your dreams.
Actually, I wanted to determine whether this thing is customized, and it could only tell your heartbeat and your footsteps. Lo and behold, this thing is democratic. It can also tell my own footsteps, as I told you. It can also tell my
Because I
heartbeat.
was enjoying the experience, you
Yes.
know. A technological companion is what this thing is, for real. You know, pick up your calls, tap there, continue, check and tell you if you've slept enough, if you need to sleep some more, counts your footsteps, tell you if there's a rise in pressure, almost about to tell you if you're going to get heartbroken. Telling you at this rate, it's a fantastic gadget.
That's the next thing it'll do.
I'm telling you.
It's 29 minutes to 7. Let's take a look at the traffic.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
This is 00 Direct, woman host, music by women, and only women guest.
Everything is so larger than life. You kind of have to have a good understanding of who you are. You could easily lose yourself.
We have a global approach in the programs that we put together, meaning that it's not just about refining my business, it's about refining the industry. It's about touching the youth and making sure that in totality, change actually happens.
Catch 00 Direct every Saturday from 10 a.m.
Only on 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
All right, Jogoro is looking really heavy this morning as you're going out towards the train station. Lots of folks getting on and off there, and it's going to take some time. Landis is starting early today with the thumping of traffic, and we're looking at the Pangani underpass specifically, coming off of the Thika Superhighway. Quite some traffic there as you're getting into the tunnel and then trying to get into town. Apart from that, it seems as though the rain has scared everybody away, and not much happening in many parts of the city. We're seeing some action then approaching Outer Ring, and we're likely to see it clog up just because of the weather. All right, what else are we looking at? Not much in terms of action on Gong Road. It will slow down later, that we know. Mombasa Road looked pretty busy around about 6 o'clock, and we will see traffic going all the way to the Nyeri Stadium roundabout slowly, but you know, it's going to pick up at some point. Okay, let's see how the morning passes on. Let us know what's going on with you. Hopefully we don't get stuck in too much traffic, but talk to us on SpiceFM KE on Twitter.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
26 minutes to 7. So, before you tell us about the buzz, let me tell you about exams that are coming to an end today.
Sawa.
And there's a girl in Form 4 in Consolata, class of 2022. Her name is Cameron Lumomo. Cameron Lumomo, your father of the Ford Maganga, is with you, taking you to school, and he says, wish my daughter and all her classmates all the best as they sit their Form 4 exams.
Okay. So now you're sending wishes? Okay, well done.
Yes.
Okay.
He always tunes in to SpiceFM in the morning.
Beautiful.
Yes, as he's doing the school drop.
Mm-hmm.
So him and Cameron are now headed somewhere. And we're wishing all the best.
Well done.
Kabisa.
Well done in advance, Cameron. 23,000 jobs will be lost in war on nightclubs. Pubs, entertainment and Restaurants Association of Kenya, PERAC, has complained that nightclubs stopped from operating in the residential areas may be forced to lay off about 23,000 employees, and that's, combined. Perak estimated that with the sacking of employees, 1.6 billion shillings in employment income earnings will be lost. In a statement, Chairman Michael Muthame said the cancellation of the nightclub's licenses will diminish sales, lowering them to below COVID-19 period, and therefore affect profitability. Mr. Muthame complained that besides robbing people of their livelihoods, the ban will also affect other businesses that rely on the nightclubs, such as food suppliers and public transport. He added that Nairobi County would miss out on at least 52 million shillings, which is usually paid as annual liquor license fee, independent from licenses linked to food handling, health, fire, and single business permit and branding. So we did see, just over a week ago, when the move started from the governor of Nairobi County, Arthur Johnson Sakaja, and he said, look, where is the next place? Literally, let's shut all of this down. Where is the next place that's still open, that's operating in a residential area?
Yeah.
Shut it what? Shut it down. No please, no I beg, no collect 200 as you pass go. Shut it down.
However, he didn't say shut them down. He said close after 10.
Yeah.
If you're operating in a residential area, this is what you need to do. What is that?
I don't know.
Is your watch making...
Something's about to blow up.
I think the watch is amplifying her heartbeat. Whoop.
Hiya.
Yeah.
The heart is speaking to you.
Governor Arthur Johnson Sakaja said, you operate as a restaurant, make sure that you have sufficient parking, not people parking by the roadside and blocking other users. Make sure that you retain noise levels at allowable minimums. Okay? Make sure that by the time you get to a certain time of night, you kill the music. Make sure that if you're a pub, at a certain time, you close the bar. If you're in a residential neighborhood.
Yeah.
If you are in a commercial center, sawa tunaweza discuss.
So why does everybody have the knickers in a twist then?
Because, Nairobi changed a long time ago. CBD is no longer the place you go to drink.
No.
It's home pubs.
It's very true.
And home pubs have become big. Yeah. So continue the story.
It's over.
It's over.
Okay.
Huh? The story, this is the one in the Nation.
Yes.
The one in the Standard says about 40 clubs operating in residential areas in Nairobi will be closed after they fail to reduce noise levels, according to Nairobi City County Government. The report says that the county government gave them 1 week to install soundproofing and or reduce sound levels to end sound pollution in residential areas. As you may be aware, the Nairobi City County Government's Directorate of Environment, Water and Sanitation is tasked with ensuring that the quality of air with respect to noise in the city of Nairobi is measured and monitored, and that interventions that seek to reduce noise pollution are established. This is according to a committee's report. Among those facing closure is Egesa in Embakasi, which is the loudest in the city, playing music at 89.4 decibels. It's followed by Quiver on Thika Road, Club in Langata, both playing music at 85.5 decibels respectively. The report said that Kilimani, which is once perceived as a high-end estate, has 25 joints that violated the noise levels by playing loud music. Those include Red House, Cigars and Booze, City Ranch, Onyx, Gucci Bar, Amazon Park, Clicks, Ox and Cox, and several Mirror kiosks. Skia Roadhouse in Enda City.
Sorry, City.
But they don't play loud music.
Walipimwa wakapatikana found to be wanting.
It is perhaps I who has a hearing defect.
Yeah. No nightclub licenses will be issued or renewed for premises operating within residential areas. Those already issued are hereby cancelled, and the establishment may continue operating as restaurants only. This is according to Acting County Secretary Jairus Musumba in a letter to club owners. Henceforth, nightclub licenses will be issued to premises only within the central business district and specified streets in other non-residential areas. Yeah, wamekata hiyo maneno.
But you know,
nightclub,
even as they kata
disco.
Do you know how many licenses a nightclub needs to have before you start operating on average?
Many. How many? 65?
8.
8. Those are few.
Minimum, I haven't mentioned, if I don't include fire and So I'm simply saying that, yes, it is indeed a step towards protecting the neighborhood. But surely, are there not other restrictions or other conditions you can put in? For instance, if you're going to play music, why don't you restrict it to a specific place within that establishment and pad it so that it's noise-proof?
That's what this council is saying. We give them 2 weeks' notice, pad your area, soundproof your premises.
2 weeks is not enough.
To do what? To soundproof?
No.
Why? Sound started traveling slower.
No. It isn't the conversation they had with sound, and it wasn't the walking pace of the sound. That's not. The 2 weeks has nothing to do with the sound. The 2 weeks has to do more with what is required for you to soundproof. It may take longer than 2 weeks. No, it is not as simple as it sounds. No.
It's not as simple as it sounds?
Yes, and it is also not as cheap as it sounds.
So then what you do is, as you prepare yourself to pad your premise, stop playing music.
Yes, I'm in agreement with you.
They've not been told that it's shut down. They've just been told, reduce your noise levels. Why can't you just reduce your noise levels?
And then your revelers will come and sing to each other. And then now...
They don't even need to sing to each other. You can actually lower the volume of your music.
Killer desk, Bluetooth speaker.
No, but in all honesty, Eric, the music doesn't have to be loud. That is just a simple truth.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be
I think these folks are kicking up a fuss just because there's a change in the MO. You can actually get this thing to work. Soundproof your thing. If you're not ready within the 2 weeks, still keep the music at a low.
Yeah.
And then sort out your issues. When you finish your padding and your soundproofing, then you play your music.
There are people who
They didn't tell them to shut down, I beg.
that if that music isn't deafening, it isn't music. Okay? You can't hear yourself. You can't hear anyone.
And then you shout.
And then everybody has to shout. So now you accompany the music because you now create more noise with it.
You also sound pollution.
Yeah, and the person is literally next to you. Yeah. So, yes. I think also it's part of this attitude that Kenyans have. Yes. This is the culture of impunity that seems to have spread everywhere. Why are they telling us? Kwani, who are they? This governor thinks he just came the other day and he's going to tell us what does he think.
Drink and shout.
Kwani him, even him, we used to, before he became governor. Why is he?
Yeah.
Now, the truth is, there are laws about these things. And I think some of these individuals don't realize that they've actually been breaking these laws for the longest time. Yes.
Now, if you think about it, think about the nightclubs, discos, in Florida. Proper soundproofing takes place there.
You know, you're right. You can pass by, you will not hear a sound.
You get into the nightclub and you're like, where am I?
Yes.
And those things no longer operate.
Just walk outside the door. Just outside the door. No sound. So, again, it's the shortcuts.
Yes.
It can
shortcuts.
be done.
Someone is supposed to soundproof, someone is supposed to meet certain standards, but they spoke to someone. And they shook someone's hand.
Just allow this thing.
And it was ignored.
Okay. Let's talk about the Hustler Fund, right? The much-awaited 50 billion shilling Hustler Fund is finally set for launch today by the President, offering hope for an affordable and quick credit to low-income groups and individuals without collateral. The fund is a core campaign promised by the Kenya Kwanza administration that was elected on a platform of lifting low-income earners, that is the hustlers. President Ruto is keen on implementing the campaign pledge that will see individuals and small businesses charge single-digit interest rates to access the money. The cheap credit targets the president's support base, which included Juakali artisans, border operators, and roadside traders. Affordable credit makes a huge difference in the rate of business growth. This is what will happen. So, how will the Hustler Fund work? The Standard on page 6 explains. For starters, the fund will be a lending service via mobile phone aimed at giving credit to small and medium-sized businesses. Borrowers will only need to be aged above 18 and have a national ID to access anything from 500 bob to 50,000 shillings. The fund shall leverage on existing commercial infrastructure, including mobile payment platforms. The loans will be priced at 8% per annum on reducing balance, meaning they'll be cheaper than the market rate of commercial loans. But there's a catch. Borrowers will be subjected to a credit score, which will determine whether or not one gets the loan and at what interest. The fund shall leverage on credit scoring model. More than 4 million loan defaulters are already set to be removed from CRB blacklist under plans mooted by the president to reform the credit market. So, they are launching part 1 of 4-part Hustler Fund. And this is a personal loan, which you can access through your mobile service, your mobile service provider, which basically, let's call it, it is the Hustler Fuliza. That's it. Hustler Fuliza, because these are 2-week loans. So it's not a month, it's a 2-week loan, it's a 10-day loan. So we'll hear. The details of that. This is going to be rolled out by the man called Simon Chelugui, who's a CS for cooperatives, micro, small and medium enterprises. He is a man in a sharp focus as President William Ruto's administration launches the Hustler Fund today. This only CS retained from President Uhuru Kenyatta's cabinet. Mr. Chelugui bears a huge responsibility of implementing the bottom-up economic model that underlined Kenya Kwanza's campaign. He's an economist with a Master of Science in Finance Investment and a Bachelor of Commerce in Finance, Public Finance from the University of Nairobi. He's been bestowed these honors of changing the fortunes of very many people.
Bestowed the honor. Okay.
Details of this, we wait to hear. And whether really this is going to unlock, what they're saying it should unlock. Yeah. Hiya. Siti.
Yes, please.
Ati.
I wanted to start.
What happened?
What is it?
They staple this thing on with something.
Why do they staple a newspaper?
It's the way they bring it to the
market.
There's a story that
to make sure it has not been, the seal is not broken.
Yeah, to make sure that nobody reads it without paying for it.
If seal is broken, return to vendor.
Yes, exactly.
Excuse me.
There's a story on page 2 of the Star, and it ties into the story on, again, page 8 of the Star. One, it involves KEMSA. The other, it involves something that many people don't even know exists in this country. Most people don't know that we actually manufacture ARVs in this country.
Allah?
Yes, we do. There is a factory in Kikuyu, Kiambu County, called Universal Corporation Limited. It produces 10% of the ARVs that we actually have in
It's called
country.
Universal?
Corporation Limited. Yes. UCL. Yes.
They produce how much?
10% of the ARVs that are used in this country.
All right.
Now, the reason why this matter is in the news is because the ARVs they produced were recalled.
That particular ALC?
Yes.
Okay.
UCL.
UCL.
But for purposes of conversation, let's call them ULC.
No problem.
Or ANC.
Or ALC. It's all right. In fact, let's put through a D in it, even just for good measure.
No problem.
Okay.
XYZ.
Yes. Now, the reason they say that they have a little background, okay? It's the only factory in Kenya that is pre-qualified by WHO to make ARVs, meaning WHO needs to understand that you've met the standards that are required for you to produce ARVs that are accepted internationally, meaning apart from just being used in Kenya, other people who are in the neighborhood and need can actually also import from you.
Yeah.
There's a problem, though. Now, most of our ARVs are imported from India. But unfortunately, November, there was a bit of a problem with the shipment. They say that when they were packaging, there was something faulty with the packaging and some of the coloring in the packaging stained the drugs. Yes. Now, it is the manufacturer who recalled them. Now, the reason is because they wanted to test the drugs to determine whether that coloring may have influenced the efficacy of the particular drug. However, this is Kenya. The thing is not going to go like that. Somebody has to say something. Okay? Yesterday, the head of NEFAC, Nelson Otuoma, accused, just in case you're wondering who NEFAC is, I will tell you shortly. He accused the National Quality Control Laboratory. Let me start again. He accused the National Quality Control Laboratory of taking too long to release the results of the tests as to whether the coloring influences or not. He says the Ministry of Health cannot recall what is good, that they are recalling it back because it is bad. So our question is, what are the health consequences? But the Ministry of Health is not answering the question, Mr. Otuoma said. Okay? Now, the problem is, He doesn't stop there. He also throws in the Pharmacy and Poisons Board. He says, these fellows also, okay, they are not doing what they say. Let me just read instead of quoting and paraphrasing. The PPB, I almost said BPP. PPB says they are still doing analysis and investigating. And I'm not sure why that analysis and investigation is taking too long. I don't know what will happen if it will come to be that these medicines were actually harmful to the health of these people. Again, one of the things that is often not done by people who are in this line of work is they don't inform the public about processes. This recalling of drugs is normal. Recalling of products is normal. It's just that it's rare in our country. But if you understand the world, the pharmaceutical world, this happens all the time. In a world where quality control is taken seriously, recalling of products, vehicles, models are recalled. Clothes are recalled.
It's a normal practice.
Yes, it's a normal practice. Something doesn't quite meet the standards that they set, they recall it. It is normal. In fact, it is a good practice to have. But when it is new, you wonder, why are you recalling it? Why haven't you recalled them in the past? But I say this, and I say it was connected with the article on page 8, because the headline is KEMSA on the spot over expired stock. Now, this is a little disturbing. The Auditor General is the one who flagged this. And they said the state medical supplier breached procurement law and irregularly hired excess staff. You know, we've heard this story before, haven't we? Okay. Medical supplies worth 300 million, 330 to be precise, including COVID-19 response, have expired at the Kenya Medical Supplies Authority warehouse. A new audit has revealed. This is disturbing.
It is.
330 million.
Worth of.
Yes. If we have it, it means somebody paid for them, isn't it?
Yes.
Or somebody was paid for bringing them, isn't it?
Yes. Someone was paid for bringing them.
Yes.
And now somebody did not pay to buy them.
Yes.
Probably.
But they're in the store, they have died. They can't be used.
They're expired. They have to be tossed. They can't die.
They have died.
Okay.
Right. This story is a bit depressing. But let me just read it anyway. KEMSA management came under fire over unexplained expenditure on COVID-19 items valued at over 7.8 billion, still under investigation by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. National Assembly Public Investments Committee also probed the irregular purchases and warned that some of the items were wasting away and needed to be disposed of, even at throwaway prices. The audit could bring to light some of the concerns amid revelations that COVID-19 supplies account for 124 million of the expired pharmaceutical and non-pharmaceutical items. 124 million my goodness gracious me, this carpet.
Now people are just there.
Money spent, and then we wonder why there's no money.
Yeah. On the other side, there's a shortage of condoms in Kenya. And the situation has led to worries as it coincides with the long school holidays and the festive season. It arose after donor agencies stopped funding HIV-related activities after Kenya's status moved from a low-income to a middle-income country, which is above the category of countries that need funding. The demand for condoms in Kenya stands at over 460 million against 150 million condoms that the government procures. The shortage is raising fears that the gains made in the prevention of new HIV infections will be rolled back.
How many condoms do you use in a year?
450.
Thousands.
Million. 460 million.
So let's take that we have a population of 45 million, roughly adults. Hey, okay. A lot of work.
Isn't it just?
Kila mtu apewe 10.
Even that, by the way, that's what it is, isn't it?
In a year.
10 condoms in a year?
There are others who don't use theirs. So then there are those who don't need.
Ndu, tell us.
Let me tell you. No word on junior high. Anxious candidates and parents wait for the announcement. We did hear from the president that we would hear from the report working party. The report is supposed to come out on Friday. Okay, so maybe there will be some information on what is supposed to happen. But right now, excuse me, my bug. Candidates are saying they're not quite sure what is going to happen. They're anxiously waiting, and parents are also waiting for the president to announce the recommendations on the Presidential Working Party on education reforms. President William Ruto failed to give a definite date on when to inform an anxious public on how learners in grade 6 will transit to junior secondary school, and less than 2 months before schools open. Dr. Ruto, who's expected to make known the recommendations of the Working Party and clear the air for the learners now undertaking the national exams, only said he would make the announcement shortly. He was speaking yesterday at Joseph Kangeve Primary School in Kibra, Nairobi County, when he went to monitor the administration of the KCPE and KEPSEA examinations. JSS was introduced in the framework by the competency-based curriculum, and he said shortly, we will be agreeing on how to transit into the next level. A decision is going to be made in the very short term so that you can know next year, especially those who are in grade 6, how they'll move and transit to the next level. However, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua appeared to say that the president could make the announcement on Friday this week. This Friday, he said, we will be giving the way forward after the president receives an interim report on how we proceed with this CBC and other reforms. So Gachagua says it's Friday.
Friday. Okay.
It's understood that the Working Party is chaired by Professor Raphael Munavu, and he presented the preliminary report to Gachagua last week, where it had to go through some fine-tuning before being handed over to the president. So maybe he's got some inside info. There has been debate.
So Gachagua is editing the report.
Sasa, it said...
What is fine-tuning?
It went to his office for fine-tuning. See, that's what an editor does.
Okay.
There had been debate and speculation about the domiciling and hosting of junior secondary school, which comprises 7 and 8. The government has been cautious not to make any announcement before the grade 6 grade 6 learners complete their assessments today. On Monday, Education Cabinet Secretary Ezekiel Machogu also sought to allay fears that learners and their families would wait for long before learning their fate, but left it to the president to make the announcement. So, look, we don't know what they're going to say. Are you going to stay where you are and complete junior secondary school in primary school? Are you going to go to high school and then the boarding issue comes along where you have 12-year-olds then boarding? I mean, what's it going to be?
It's January we're talking about.
Yeah.
4 weeks' time.
Yes.
People are going to secondary school.
7 weeks' time, because it's the end of January.
Yeah, people are going to secondary school.
You think that the grade 6s will now go into secondary school?
Which teachers are these that are going to be taken to primary to teach secondary?
Who's going to agree? Already they're having an issue with it. Kupet and Kena and
not even that.
And
you have an issue. You'll have a shortage. If you remove teachers from secondary schools and take them to primary to teach 2 classes, you'll have an issue in the secondary schools.
There's already a shortage of teachers in the country. So then now you want to remove where there's already a shortage at the secondary level and take them to primary school.
They will be, I'm telling you, whatever what if Ruto speaks on Friday or next week or whenever, CBC is going on. These grade 6s are going to junior secondary schools in secondary schools because investment has already been made, even by the private sector, in secondary schools. So, confusion inaleta ina nani. Keep it here for more conversations coming up in the next hour. All right, stand up and shine with Kiwi. If you go and buy Kiwi black shoe polish, which renews black leather, you are able then to win up to 35,000 shillings worth of what? School fees. Every week somebody wins. But also, you stand a chance of getting instant airtime or data. And all you need to do is buy the Kiwi, open the can, look at under the lid. You will find a unique code. And then you send *459 *5#. Stand a chance to win. Good morning. It is 7 a.m.
Spice up your life.
Good morning, this is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. Kenya Kwanza's signature pledge, the Hustler Fund, will be launched today after receiving a nod from Cabinet. The fund is set to give 8 million Kenyans a second chance to access credit at the lowest interest rate. It will offer much-needed relief and a new lease of life to millions of Kenyans who could not access credit after having been blacklisted by various credit rating agencies by offering them loans from as minimum as 500 shillings to as high as 50,000 shillings at 8% prorated basis or a daily rate of 0.002%. Cooperative and Micro, Small and Medium Enterprise Cabinet Secretary Simon Chilugui said all is set for the rollout with selected Kenyans set to receive money during the trial phase. Standard Media Group is following up on this launch and be sure that it will be bringing you the very latest in a subsequent news bulletin. Now, the National Assembly today is expected to continue with vetting of Principal Secretary nominees after the court dismissed the case filed by the Law Society of Kenya against the exercise. A total of 29 people among the 51 who had yet to be vetted will appear before various parliamentary committees. The Speaker of the National Assembly, Moses Wetangula, announced the criteria that will be used today. Those who will appear today include Belio Kipsang and Esther Moria, who will appear before the Education Committee. Former Langata MP Nixon Korir and Charles Hinga will appear before the Lands Committee. Speaker Wetangula gave a deadline of up to Friday this week for the committees involved in the vetting process to make sure that they finish before Parliament proceeds for the long recess of the Christmas and New Year holiday. And President William Ruto's cabinet has resolved to forego 1 month's salary as the individual and collective contribution towards the ongoing state interventions that support Kenyans affected by the drought. The resolution was reached during the third cabinet meeting chaired by the head of state. As part of the long-term measures to address the cyclic drought situation and the cost of living, the cabinet in addition assessed the food supply situation in the country.
We wanted to show in a modest way our solidarity with the rest of Kenyans who are facing such a terrible time with the drought. And we know that so many Kenyans are supporting the cause. So in our small way, we resolved unanimously to forfeit a month's pay as a contribution to the kitty. Actually, it is our first ever salary as this month closes, so I will not be earning a penny of it. There's a kitty that has been put in place, and the whole effort is being coordinated by His Excellency the Deputy President.
The meeting noted that the cost of the nation's staple food, maize, remains unacceptably high, currently retailing between 180 and 210 shillings for a 2 kg packet of maize flour. The cabinet further noted that the harvesting of maize is ongoing across the country, with this year's crop estimated to yield about 30 million bags of maize. The cabinet, in light of this, resolved that the farmers' produce will be accorded priority access to the market. A cabinet secretary gets a monthly salary of 924,000 shillings, meaning the 22 cabinet secretaries will collectively donate 10,328,000 shillings. And the state will import 10 million bags of maize between February and April next year. In a statement, Agriculture CS Mithika Linturi noted that the importation will not take place this year. This as Kenyans and some politicians raised questions over the quick decision to import the produce, yet some farmers have not exhausted the grains in their stores. The imports would only follow after a review establishes the deficits that exist. Linturi said this in a statement to Parliament. Following a question by Pokot South MP David Kosing, the MP said farmers can now be at ease following the clarity by the concerned ministry.
And in short, Honorable Speaker, the minister is saying the threats of 72 hours given by somebody is no more there. So farmers now can sell their maize peacefully. The minister is saying maybe they will review it in February. That is precise, Honorable Speaker. That's a responsible minister. Not the other one who was going around and issuing some unknown threats, including Speaker, one that they said in my neighbor county, that if you don't sell your maize within 72 hours, you will feed those maize in your dog, Speaker. That cannot be a responsible minister, Speaker. Now the farmers all over the place now are aware, and this is the house of record, this is the house of the people, that the farmers can sell their maize peacefully until maybe February next year. They can review that and meet next year, Honorable Speaker. Therefore, that statement is very fundamental, and Kenyans now know who is in charge of agriculture.
And Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition leader Raila Odinga has announced that he has called off planned rallies in support of the 4 IEBC commissioners, the rallies that were scheduled to take place today. Now, after meeting with Azimio MPs, Odinga said the parliamentary group had decided to postpone the protest to December 7th in respect of the ongoing national exams. Odinga also said they won't accept the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee's report and referred to it as the work of a hired hit squad and a lynch mob. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseda. Good morning.
SpiceFM, Nakuru.
All right, that built up on Jogger Road is still doing the rounds, and we're looking at it heavy then going towards Landis. Landis is feeding off onto Kamkunji at that area there at the roundabout. And we're also seeing traffic now starting to build up on the Thika Superhighway. It's coming in heavy from the Outer Ring Junction and further ahead then from Safari Park and everything else coming in that direction. It looks like it's going to slow down considerably. The service lanes is what we're being encouraged to use on the Thika Superhighway, so you want to think about that. The Southern Bypass is also going to offer you a great escape from the traffic that's built up quite some on Mombasa Road this morning. What else are we looking at? Outer Ring, getting some traffic as well, crossing over from Manyanja, crossing over from Kangunda Road and Juja Roads this morning. Traffic has already begun. Coming out of Westlands, we're also seeing bumper-to-bumper action. It will continue for some time. The roads are slippery, so be careful. Do two things. Be patient and careful this morning. Let's talk on SpiceFM KE on Twitter and keep things moving.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room,
7
the
minutes
only
after 7.
way to
Good morning
start
and
your
welcome
day.
to the second hour of The Situation Room. How are you doing? It's the 30th of November, 2022. Your watch is still making noise. You know, Ndu has a Samsung Galaxy Watch 5 Pro. What is happening?
That's the heartbeat.
Yeah.
How's your heartbeat?
Yeah, that's my heartbeat.
It has an
Loud and
alarm.
clear, innit? So you know that I'm
Meaning by-
alive. Yes.
So what else does the watch do?
Tells the time.
Uh-huh.
Also lets me know if I've had enough sleep. And probably that's why it's beating at this point, because it's saying, look, to get back under the covers is very necessary this morning.
You didn't sleep enough.
Mm-mm.
That's it.
That's the problem.
And if that sound is alarming, it's because this watch also tells you stress levels. If you don't sleep enough, your body is stressed. And not mind, not brain, body. Because body needs rest. Body inside the clot needs rest.
Oh, well done.
What? Ndu? Please, heed the advice from your watch.
Yeah, the watch. I'm going to keep
Your
the watch
companion.
on. Yeah, my tech companion.
You can add the tech if you want, but it's your companion. Walk around with you all the time. City.
Yes.
Why did you tell us the day's
Well,
proverb?
let me talk about my companion also, since while we are talking about companions, the Samsung Galaxy Tab S8 Ultra. I'm going to read a proverb from it. I see one Miss Njogu since this tablet, wonderful things. Days like this. Communities will count 3 like this. It's like this. 3. Like this. Okay? Without charging. This one. Okay?
Oh.
Right. Let me read the proverb. It is God who drives away flies from a tailless animal.
It is God who drives away flies from a tailless animal.
Yeah, this is a proverb. Okay? This is not something that someone observed and then they're telling us that, we saw God driving away flies from tailless animals.
But that animal which does not have a tail, God has provided for the nuisance of flies to still be swept away.
Yes, exactly.
I'm now left to wonder which animals don't have tails.
Mammals, like men and women. Well, they have a semblance of it, but you really can't call it a tail. It's more of a rear.
Sawa.
Yeah, it's okay.
Sawa.
Yeah.
We accept. Whatever you say, sawa.
Nah, it's okay.
Tuendelee. Mwalimu. Tuendelee.
Thank you, sir.
You know, today is the 30th of November, and all the headlines are screaming. The Nation headline, what does it say?
Shouting, saying Hustler Fund, Hustler Fund. Hustler Fund is finally here. The Standard, Hustler Fund launch, the good, the bad, the ugly.
And this is all because the cabinet issued a communique 2 weeks ago and said the Hustler Fund will be launched on the 30th of November. The president had told us the last time he spoke to us on what was that thing at Jamhuri grounds at Uhuru Gardens? It was Mashujaa. Was it Mashujaa?
It Utamaduni Day.
No, the other one.
Mashujaa.
It was
Mashujaa Day. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
He said he'll launch it in December. Then the cabinet told him, December what, my friend? Why December? Launch on this side of November. So he's launching it today. We don't know where, but we'll find out soon. It's going to be launched today. The good, the bad, the ugly. What are the details of this Hustler Fund? CS Chelugui was speaking again yesterday and saying, so they are launching one of the 4 products. The whole idea of the Hustler Fund was to do what? Was to support the small and micro enterprises and entrepreneurs to thrive in business. Have they been getting access? The other day we were having a conversation here and Dr. Mwinde was saying, these people have been getting access to financing in other ways. They have other ways of getting financing. One of the people who knows how they've been getting access to financing joins us now in the studio. His name is Fred Njogu. He's a chief operating officer at an organization called Correlation Africa. He's also an expert in financing small and micro businesses. Fred, good morning.
Good morning. Good
Welcome
morning,
to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank you. Good morning, Du. Good morning, City.
Good morning.
Nice to be here.
Finally on the hot seat of the Situation Room.
It's feeling hot already.
Relax, Buana. So you've brought us money, and we, City and I are micro entrepreneurs.
Yes. In fact, at the rate we're going to be microscopic very soon.
We are nano entrepreneurs. So we are. Fred, tell us about Correlation Africa. What do you do?
Yeah, so Correlation is actually a company that started in the data space. Started before that in the FMCG space. So really we are
FMCG,
fast-moving consumer goods. We are engineers that try and relook at what processes are there, how to make the whole business more efficient, how to help the organization do much better with what it has. And eventually we started realizing that at the end of the day, where this thing breaks down is at the moment of truth, where the customer has to buy your goods. So when you deliver your goods to the customer looks at the drawer. Generally in the small businesses that we have, kiosks, tabletops and stuff, they look at the drawer and they see, okay, I need to budget for the amount of milk I'm going to sell, the amount of soft drinks, bread, unga, all those things. And I have this limited amount of money. So they start apportioning, not based on the demand in their area, but based on the amount of money they have. And the easiest way to unlock that person's potential is by extending them credit. So we found that initially, and it already happens everywhere, you get a lot of distributors financing those retailers, not really by giving them cash, but by giving them consignment stocks. Sell, I'll come and collect
the money later.
But the distributor's job is not
to extend
credit. The distributor is supposed to make money by just distributing goods. So somebody else needs to do the financing. And the problem is that the people who do the financing do not know those customers the way the distributors know them. These distributors know them, they know how long they have been, what they buy every so often, and so on and so forth. They have a lot of the details.
By distributor, are we talking about the big distributor, or are we talking, because if you're talking about the small kiosks and all, these guys are supplied by somebody on a motorbike or on a bicycle who comes with the loaves of bread and leaves the loaves of bread and goes on to the next one.
So you'll find a lot of the big companies and progressively smaller ones, and also just distributors who are not manufacturers, actually have very good information systems. They have data. They know Njoro's kiosk is outside in this location. It's owned by this person, and that's his worker who works there. Maybe that's his wife who also works there. And this is how much they buy from me. But the bank or the financial institution that's supposed to finance that outlet does not know. It just knows there's an outlet there. How much do they buy? How much do they sell? Of which goods? They don't know. So what we do is actually to create that linkage. We give transparency to a financier who is interested in financing, solving that gap. And how we do it is that we combine this business information that we have from the distributor or the FMCG company, the anchor, with the personal information that the bank needs, because the bank needs to know, actually it's Ndu who owns that shop that is called Njoro's shop. Maybe you bought it from Njoro. But we need to know your ID number, we need to maybe get your PIN, maybe we need to get your business registration and all those things. Then we combine the sales information plus the personal information plus location information to form a complete picture of a lendable business. So what we do is that we are able to do that at scale, at a really large scale, very fast. And we are able to package that information to a financial institution that then makes a decision to lend or not lend that person. So that's what we do.
So how then do you describe an establishment or a business to then be lendable? Because the thought is that, all right, here's somebody who's Njoro selling juice, whatever. How then do you say, what are the markers then that you're looking for to say then whether this business will be lendable? And then wouldn't the thought be that if Fred is coming to do this scrutiny of this business and maybe give pointers as to what ought to happen, the thought is that the end result would be a guaranteed access to credit. So that you're taking it to the financier and saying, look, we've done the due diligence, this is an organization or this is an establishment that you can actually go ahead and fund, you know. So there are two things. What makes a business lendable? And then as you're going through this process, the thought would be that the end result is that, yes, the much needed capital is going to come through because I've been through this process.
Okay, so the first thing I think would be to say that all businesses are lendable. Because, for instance, you have the hawker that goes to a shop, a supplier somewhere in Kamukunji or Nyamakima and leaves their ID and gets goods, goes and sells, finishes selling those goods, comes back with money and is given more goods like that. So from there, where they really have nothing to corporates. So all businesses are lendable, just depends on how much risk somebody wants to take. Our typical financial institutions, you start from friends, Shylocks, all the way to banks. Banks are regulated, so who they lend is quite well defined. I mean, the kind of risk that they can take, because then they are lending on other people's money, on depositors' money. So a bank generally will have a certain criteria. They will not take the same risk as the distributor who's sitting in Kamukunji or Nyamakema. They will be more interested in somebody that's a bit more established, that has maybe a premises and that has a track record. So what we do, we agree with the banks what are those criteria that make sense for them. So you find maybe there are 120, 150,000 kiosks and dukas in Kenya, which, by the way, is way more than the total number of retail outlets in the EU.
What?
FYI. Yes.
Say that again?
The number of dukas and kiosks in Kenya is way more than the retail outlets in the EU.
The entire European Union?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll talk about that. But it's actually quite interesting. So we actually operate in a very complex market. And complexity, the way our economy is structured, it favors complexity. Because if you open a kiosk and I see that it's doing well, nothing stops me from opening a kiosk next door.
Yes.
So, and nothing stops. On the other hand, these other formal economies, the markets, because they are driven by the markets, by the stock markets, they reward consolidation, efficiency. So the two of you, somehow you'll have to figure out how to merge.
Yeah.
So back to your question about the criteria. So we agree with the bank, because at the end of the day, they have to lend responsibly. What are the rules? They say we want maybe a shop that has been there for at least 1 year, at least consistently buying for 6 months, that has this, maybe that is not listed on the CRB, and now there's a whole change about that, thinking about the CRB, etc., etc. That does a certain volume. Although all the products that we have, we don't have a minimum threshold for volume. So you can be buying 500 shillings or 200 shillings, doesn't matter. Generally, they want to be sure that you are there to...
You're trading.
Exactly. Then once you collect that information, we can pass it to a bank, and the bank will then make the lending decision. We find, because of that, what we talked about, banks being reluctant to lend because of that regulation, then we have sometimes to support them. So you say, what's your risk? And can we do something about that risk? Can we take a portion of that risk and collateralize it and offer it to somebody else who is willing to take that risk on a first loss basis, for instance? So just to make it easy. So to come to your point, we are able to actually create a product that can cover the entire spectrum.
Yeah. That makes sure that everybody is able to access credit.
Exactly.
Now, the conversation is around the Hustler Fund. And the Hustler Fund, as we've been discussing, as the Kenya Kwanza team were going around the country, they sold this and said, your big problem is you're running a business and you don't have access to money to keep financing your operations. Just like you're saying, buying stock and reselling. And we want to come up with a fund that will be able to support you in this. Now, from what you've seen in the market, these small and micro businesses, the shops, the person who is doing a small kiosk, a small food vendor, small juakali artisan, all these people, they need cash on a daily basis to keep operating. What is this gap that they have? I mean, what other ways can they be sorted out so they can easily access money on a daily basis?
So the reality is the gap is there. I mean, in these economies, we are growing faster than we can produce. I mean, the demand for goods and services is higher than the economy can pay for. So generally, we will need financing from somewhere. And a lot of times, most people are required to provide collateral, which they don't have. Most of the people who are starting off in business are very young. They have no land. They have no... I mean, they really do not have anything that can securitize any facility that they take. And I think that's what the Hustler Fund is trying to do, to solve that problem, which is what we are trying to do ourselves by digitizing and monetizing what we call goodwill. So goodwill is, if you ask somebody in town, they'll tell you goodwill is, I have a shop somewhere on Tomboya Street junction with Ronald Ngala, very busy, and therefore, if I'm selling it to you, give me 1 million shillings goodwill.
That's just goodwill.
Just goodwill. You don't
not rent, not anything.
Yeah. How do you quantify it? So one of the things we are doing is by saying that actually we know from the supplier that supplies this customer, this is the amount of business that outlet does. And therefore, that 1 million shillings actually makes sense. But don't just use it the day you are transferring the business to somebody else. Use it also with a bank. So the bank actually can trust the number that you say, I do turnover of 1 million. So extend me 1 million, I'll be good for 1 million, and stuff like that. Now, for the person who doesn't have that sales history, or their business is not that well structured, that they have suppliers who have those kind of records. And most of those companies, generally, most of those entities don't keep good books. Then I guess now I know that's where the Hustler Fund is supposed to come in and say, okay, you are involved in this business. Maybe we need to set some guardrails and say, for if you are a border and you apply, we can guarantee you if you go to consume fuel at a certain petrol station, and we are sure the fuel has entered your tank, 200, 500, whatever amount it is that you need for the day. You do your business, make your money, pay us back. By developing certain guardrails that then make the fund sustainable. Because on the other hand, also you have people who want to, take advantage.
So the guardrails would be that somebody within the same ecosystem or value chain is becoming like your guarantor.
Yes.
Like in the case I'm hearing. So the fact that the data that you use, for example, is coming from the distributor, the distributor is the one who's sort of like a guarantor, because the distributor's word is, yes, I know this shop. Yes, I supply goods worth X amount to this particular shop.
So they're the introducer. He's the one who introduces you to the formal financial system. Yes.
So the same kind of thing, if it were to happen in terms of rolling out the Hustler Fund, it will be who else
can vouch?
Who can vouch for you?
Yeah.
Talking about vouching yesterday, right?
Yes, we
who
were.
were you vouching for yesterday?
Was I vouching for anybody? Was I just having an academic discussion about the concept?
Oh.
We were talking about essentially the concept of a guarantee scheme, because that's what vouching is. And how it is that guarantee can actually become pivotal to whether the so-called hustler and the businesses that fall into that category can actually move up. Because if you don't have the means, that is that one, should we say, piece of the puzzle that can actually help you move out. Because with the guarantee, you will then be able to access the credit that ordinarily you would not be able to access.
Exactly.
You'll be able to access things that ordinarily were way beyond you.
Exactly.
Now, the question that we were asking then was, with this Hustler Fund, given its structure, the framework within which it's supposed to operate, beyond just the money, beyond that, just the fuliza, what else does it do?
Well, it stimulates. So so the one thing is that it allows people to grow their business, and I'll give you an example. But also it stimulates, and it's a sort of a stimulus fund, and governments all over the world.
I'm going to ask you to explain this concept of stimulus fund. I've heard it very many times. I would just like to understand it better.
So
what it looks like, what it's supposed to do, and when it has done its job, what the end product will look like.
Yes. So assume government sees an opportunity to drive logistics business, and logistics business at the very low end, not trucks and ships, but maybe motorbikes, to help distribute goods. Already it's happening without any support, without any regulation. But the government could say, okay, we see an opportunity and maybe we can structure it, we can help those people become more structured and formalized and eventually be able to tax them. But we can stimulate that business so that you don't need to think about whether you're going to pick up something, whether you don't need to think about it. You just, it's so formalized that you key in somewhere that I have this parcel that needs to go here, and it gets there somehow. Stuff like that. That already stimulates a whole completely new type of business, because of course, people will buy motorbikes, people will get jobs, people will buy fuel, people will buy spare parts. And through that kind of business, then they'll be able to enhance their livelihood, pay school fees, buy a bigger TV, etc., and the multiplier.
Yeah.
So it does that stimulus. But also, it needs to be regulated in a way, I don't want to use the word regulation because it's a bit of a strong word, but it needs to be done in such a way that it becomes sustainable, so that we do not run the 50 billion down and next year we have to budget for it again. That we are able to give people money responsibly, that they do their economic activity and repay for the next person. Like HELB, HELB is supposed to be you go study, you get your job and pay, and helps for the next person. Same thing.
The reason why I asked the question, I'm looking at something that I'm familiar with, and that is the process that the government has got into that they refer to as affordable housing. for something to be affordable, it means you need to be able to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what you're discussing is the sort of process or program that would enable a small trader or a small business person to actually enhance their capacities. Now, if you enhance your capacities, it means you'll be in a better position to be able to afford some of these amenities that are being presented.
Yep.
But beyond making it available, there is always the issue of ensuring that people understand the best way of utilizing what they are getting. Because you can have give people access, but if they do not utilize it in the way that it was purposed, then it won't achieve the desired results.
Oh yeah.
No.
Actually, so maybe if I can mention something. Well, one of our partners in our business is MasterCard. So we are working with a number of FMCGs, Unilever, Coke, and a few others.
What are these GGs?
FMCGs.
Fast-moving
consumer goods.
fellows.
Players,
Right.
fuel companies, and so on. But one of the financial institutions that we work with is MasterCard. And MasterCard actually places quite a bit of emphasis on training, on first of all, how to do business effectively, responsible use of funds, and so on and so forth. So one aspect, one leg of making the program more sustainable is actually training. Because there are people who will get, even if you decide you're not giving them cash, advancing cash, but you're allowing them to draw down goods somewhere, whether it's fuel, whether it's groceries. Once they sell them and convert to cash, then they divert it.
Yep.
So you really need to have a way of ensuring that people learn good practices, how to run a business effectively. And such programs, training programs, etc., I think are going to be very key to successful rollout of the Hustler Fund.
Talks about very many partners. We'll continue the conversation shortly. It's 29 minutes to 8. This is the Situation Room. Fred Njogu is a micro and small businesses financing expert. He's also the Chief Operating Officer at Coral Action Africa. It's an organization that deals with those small businesses, kiosks, dukas, and all, and helping them to secure credit. We are talking about this because the Hustler Fund is being launched today. So we are looking at what are the current options that the hustlers have in accessing financing. Are they working? Can the Hustler Fund tap some lessons from these or not? You know, Fred was my schoolmate. We went to school together with Fred. We're in the same house. And in those days, we used to have a school principal called Mr. Who?
Kibani.
Bossman. It's called Bossman. And the deputy was called Mr. Katungo.
Yes.
Katungo was also everything else. He was the discipline master. He was everything.
Deputies tend to be precisely that.
With him, guts was proper.
I think he used to know karate as well.
That's what he told you.
That's how he behaved.
That's how he demonstrated.
Yeah.
When they landed on you, those were karate kicks. So often, guards would walk around checking whether your shoes are actually well polished. Right? And of course, you know, it's black shoes.
Yes.
Everybody must have kiwi. By extension. Because guards will come and check whether your shoes are shining. So, Fred never got into trouble with guards because his shoes were always shining. So, Fred, congratulations for that.
Thank you.
And now, because you're a father as well, and your children are going to school, and I'm sure you've told them about Kiwi, you know, you can actually win school fees next year.
Oh, I need it.
Yes. You can. Go to any shop, buy Kiwi black shoe polish. Open the lid. Under the lid, you will find a unique code. You take that code, dial star 459 star 5 hash. That's star 459 star 5 hash. Send the code and you stand a chance of winning instant airtime, instant data, or a weekly draw where one person gets 35,000 shillings worth of school fees. Again, star 459 star 5 hash.
Okay.
Na rangi ni ya kiwi. Black. Yeah.
Black.
I know you're ready to buy the kiwi. So this time, just check under the lid.
Take advantage.
Yes. We'll be back shortly. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Thank you very much, Eric, and it's good to be at the Situation Room.
Always a pleasure coming here. This is the most challenging interview panel in Kenya. You guys are very well informed, and as you can see, Charles today, very philosophical.
To be poor in this country is the greatest sin you can commit, not just from a legal perspective, but from life generally. It is very, very skewed.
We've just heard on the floor of Parliament, just most recently, a leader within the ODM saying that sisi ni ng'ombe za baba.
Yep.
Which means that you are willing to be milked dry.
Hapo.
You cannot force me to believe. I'll give way. If it's land that I'm told to return to you, I will. Okay? Because the court has said so. But I'll continue saying, hawa watu wamenirusha. That's all that I'm doing.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
All right, looking at now sunny conditions in Nairobi, highs of 24 and lows of 17. The rain likely to make a comeback later. It's sunny at 14 in Nakuru, highs of 26 and lows of 13. And we'll see highs of 24 in Nyeri, where it's cloudy at 15. It's sunny at 12 in Eldoret, highs of 24, and it'll go to highs of 31 in a rainy Mombasa at 23. 26 and light rain in Malindi, highs of 31, and looking at 20 degrees and partly sunny conditions in Kisumu, highs of 28, and it'll go to highs of 28 as well in Kakamega, where it's currently sunny at 19. Kampala's raining at 19, highs of 26, and it'll go to highs of 30 in Dar es Salaam, where it's sunny at 26. 16 and sunny in Johannesburg, highs of 26, and it'll see highs of 32 in a clear Lagos at 25. 22 and clear in Kinshasa, highs of 32, back down to lows of 22. It took a minute, but now we see that traffic is building up on Gong Road. And then also on this other side of Mombasa Road, we're looking at traffic building up on North Airport Road. It's spilling over to Outer Ring and then going back onto Mombasa Road right around the Nyeri Stadium roundabout. It's also building up as you get towards that Haile Selassie junction. Okay, what else are we looking at? It's also busy on Lunga Lunga. Jogo Road now is stretching its traffic way past that roundabout at the City Stadium, and it's going to leak onto Landis, which is heavy inbound and approaching Kamkunji into the CBD. On the Thika Superhighway, it's reducing, interestingly enough, at this hour, and just past that Allsops junction is now where we're seeing traffic. It's bumper to bumper in and outbound on Kiambu Road, and looks like it'll continue that way for some time. Looking into Limuru Road and that whole area, Kitisuru, Peponi, Lower Kabete, everything inside there, traffic. And it's going to be messy for some time. Let's keep an eye on things, guys. Tell us what's going on where you are. SpiceFM KE on Twitter.
Welcome to Spice FM, the best exclusive radio station bringing you the best mix of the best music ever. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
Conversation continues with Fred Njogu, financing expert, dealing with micro and small enterprises. We're talking about the hustlers and how the hustlers have been accessing credit to run their business. People go into business not so that they can go into business. They go into business so that they can earn a living and, run their life, to fund their lifestyles. What have they been doing to access credit or to access money to run their business? So before even you got in there and you started formalizing the kind of data that was flowing, what else were they doing? How are they getting money?
Well, I think the first one that you'd say is that a lot of them would get consignment stocks from their suppliers.
Okay.
So the suppliers would leave them with goods and come and check how much did you sell, and therefore give me the money. That obviously is not sustainable because the big suppliers will not give you. If you are a new entrant, nobody will give you any money. So you'd probably go to the family, sell something, or go to a Shylock, or go to a microfinance, digital lenders, and so on and so forth. But then that comes with an element. The first one is that it's not sustainable because you will not get enough stock to run your business.
Yeah.
But where you can, then it will come at a very high cost. So the element of cost is actually a big deal. And you find a lot of people get into the business because they see somebody else doing it, and they don't actually understand the financing of that business. And somebody tells you, just go here, you get this loan, and you start. And then that's what they call character development.
It lands on you properly.
Yeah. Because I mean, you risk actually being foreclosed, being auctioned. And what we've realized is that a lot of people, they say about more than 2/3 of the businesses do not last 5 years. Because of that lack of access to finance, or when you access it, it's very expensive. And the other remaining 1/3 actually struggle and are not able to do well enough to tap the opportunity because of that cost of financing. And therefore, any program, any system that comes in that enables them get the goods that they need to be able to do their trade at an affordable price, then helps them. I'll give you an example. Big retail margins, net margins, are in the range of 2 to 3% net.
And this is big retail.
Big retail. And they manage to push suppliers for 90 days. They really know how to play the supply chain, but that's their margin. You can imagine the small shop. Our job is actually to make that small shop as competitive as the big retail, to give them that chance. Generally, they have higher margins because they don't. I mean, the suppliers make higher margins from them because they cannot negotiate as much.
Yeah.
Because they want to get things on. You have to follow them up for payment. You have to drop a small size. You can imagine if you are selling, let's say, you are selling only fruits, and you can imagine if you have to drop something in a tuk-tuk, at least it needs to be worth at least 500 shillings for it to make
Just
sense to drop at that shop.
To deliver it to that shopkeeper.
That shop. Yes, if you have to do 40 shops, you can do the math. 40 shops in a day, at least 500 per shop, you'll probably be making money. You need to sell more. So if you are selling only fruits or only bread, then it means it becomes very difficult for you to make money. Therefore, you ignore those outlets, and you force those outlets to go to the wholesaler to go and buy from there. So they have to close their shop, go and pick up goods and pay transport and stuff like that. So there are many things that go into making such an outlet more efficient. It's not only financing. It's about, the whole advice about what's the type of business you should be in. Because if you are only a fruit seller, you probably every day have to close the shop, go to Marikiti,
get your
buy
fruits,
your things, and then come and sell. But if you are beyond fruits, you can actually maybe wait and the supplier will come because
you're big,
and you're also doing other things. You're also selling other things in that shop. So access to finance becomes a very key enabler, but then also the business that you are in is a big determinant of whether you actually succeed. Like we said, retailers, small margins. Maybe you go to bars, bigger margins, different business. Maybe you go to salons, bigger margins, different business, etc., like that.
But there's something that I've observed. I don't know if it's a copycat mentality or not, but a business starts and then there are others that are similar to it. But also with time, I've noticed there is a process that is gaining in popularity where people buy directly from the source. Like if it's a farm product, you buy it and it can actually also be brought to you. So you don't have to go. Then thirdly, I've seen, but this one I haven't seen in abundance, where individuals who are in the same line of business source whatever they want as a group. Okay? So the economies of scale work in their favor. Now, if you are advising on financing such businesses, do you consider these factors? And if anything, do you also enable some of these factors and the structures that these factors have? Because they do contribute to the well-being of these other businessmen down the chain, because they are the final outlet for these products to the individual at the retail level.
Yeah. Okay. So I wouldn't say we currently advise, but it's a right thing to do. So we form groups. If you're producers, producer business groups. If you are consumers of the products, well, not consumers but buyers of the products, maybe SACCOs. And SACCOs are very efficient in mobilizing capital, in ensuring guarantees, because you guarantee amongst yourselves, in accessing finance. So, and I think that is one area that really the government could play a big role by driving a process of helping these people form those cooperatives. Because as a SACCO, you can come to the bank and say, we want 10 million shillings to buy 100 motorbikes.
You know,
as opposed to as an individual, you going and asking the bank to give you 100,000 to buy a motorbike.
What I've also found with the time is that the government is needed, but maybe not required in helping them form. People in this country seem to be very good at forming themselves into groups.
True.
They're actually very good at it.
Yep.
And you'll find all manner of office bearers. You'll even hear titles you've never heard of before. But they form themselves into groups. Now, that next step, they even have setups where they contribute 5 or 10 shillings. They go that far. But it's thereafter, because then it's like there are things they purpose to do, and in my view, that limits their vision. And yet there's a lot more they could do, since they already have the framework within which they can do these wonderful things.
Yep.
See, I'm actually going back to the same thing I asked you. Because given what you've said, you do, okay? Is that not where an injection of ideas and the funds would then propel these groupings into that takeoff stage where they now move into the realm of doing what we can refer to as serious business, as opposed to this penny pinching business that they're involved in?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, when you think about a lot of the big banks in Kenya have started organizing themselves and recognizing what we call chamas, those organizations, which are not registered as a SACCO. They're just what are they called?
It's a grouping of people.
Yeah, and they recognize them, and the more structured you are, the more they listen to you. And it's actually the banks are going ahead. So the private sector is going ahead of the government in innovating and understanding and taking risk. Because again, at the end of the day, it's a risk. But it is a space that would benefit a lot from more insight. You know, what happens, and it's one of the things we do, you have data. Data says this number of people contributing this amount of money per month, this is the amount of money. But then what does that tell you about those people? Are they growing? Are they going up, down? Are they all okay? Is everybody contributing the same levels? That's information. So you start from data
to
information, then insights. What is this telling me about this organization? This organization can actually has started by buying maybe one matatu, but based on the way they're operating, I can see. But the way they're operating their matatu, I can see where they're inefficient. Maybe they're in the wrong route, or they are wasting fuel, or whatever. So those are insights. After insights, now you start actions. So what are you going to do about what you've learned about the way you're operating your business? Then you get some results. Maybe you do better after you take those actions, or you do worse. Maybe you took the wrong decisions. And then you get new data, and you keep going down
it's a cycle.
That cycle. So it's important that those organizations, those people in those informal organizations actually start creating some pool of data, anything that can be used later. Start recording what you're doing, how much money you're collecting, how frequently, what you, etc., etc. That information, that data will come to information and lead to eventually more data that helps you drive your business better.
Okay. If you were to give an example, a practical, so that, I mean, kind of landed, if you give an example about how, you're saying, okay, on a Matatu route, perhaps the data that you then collect is how can you, use your fuel more efficiently so then as to save you then at the end of the day, right? So are we essentially saying that as businesses use this data, we are seeing improved efficiency? Or on the other hand, are we saying if you don't use the data that is available to then either fuel your business or apply that information to the business, that then you're essentially doing yourself a disservice by not collecting it? And is this data available to all businesses across board, or must we then go through?
First, the data is not available. You must actually seek to generate that data. I can use the Matatu example. Let's say, for instance, you have a SACCO, and this SACCO operates from here, let's say, to Eldoret. You'll find a lot of times those people just know that it costs me maybe 8,000 shillings to fuel this vehicle. But is it 8,000? So members of that SACCO just know you collect the money at the stage. You don't know when the money was collected. You don't know what time. You just know you do maybe one trip per day. What's the best time to do a trip? How much fuel actually went into the tank of your vehicle? From which station? Have you done an analysis to see the vehicles that are generating problems along after 1 year, the failure rate? How does that correlate with where they are fueling? Are they owned by the drivers? Or are they driven by the owners, or are they driven by employees, etc.? There are a lot of data points that you can actually collect, and one way of collecting that is maybe how do you collect the money? Do you use a digital system to get your fare, to collect the fares, or not? What records are kept by the SACCO office, for instance, and how is that data used in informing how the Matatu works? Why are some Matatus doing better than others? Bought on the same day, driven to the same route. So that kind of things. Another example is you have all these, again, FMCG company. I'm an FMCG person. So I know quite a bit about what they do. So you can imagine you have a sales rep that goes to a particular, that sells on a Monday, I'm in Kariobangi. On Tuesday, I'm in, let's say, South Sea, like that. On Friday, I'm some other place. On Friday, there's a particular shop I go to, and I always bounce. The owner is not there. But what time do I go there? Lunchtime. Maybe this person is a Muslim and has gone for prayers. But, when you see the data, you say, why is it that every Friday you don't sell at that shop? Or in the last 13 weeks, you've only sold 2 times. Why? So if you have a system that records what time you are selling, because these companies are that advanced, you can actually tell. You can see where the person went and what time they sold.
Big FMCG companies.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They have all that information.
Oh, yeah.
But the time a sales rep is actually arriving at a shop.
How long it's spent, because, again, how much time you spend at the outlet is very important, because how many outlets do you cover? On the one hand, you need to cover your 30, 40 outlets. But how much quality time do you spend at the outlet? Are you convincing the customer? Are you trying to sell in your premium pack, your new promotion, etc.? So if you spend 2 minutes, I know you actually maybe didn't even enter. You talk to the guy from across the road. So so that data actually helps with training, because when you see that trend later, and you can see, so we collect all that data. We can it's interesting actually, because then you can use it to talk to the sales rep and say, tell me about this outlet. Do you know the owner? What happens? And then you say, maybe go at 2:00, change, go to that other one first, etc. And you start seeing growth in that route, on that particular outlet, and so on and so forth. Many things that you notice that when you call on an outlet every week, for instance, you don't have to sell them 10 cases of something. You can sell them 1 case of this, and then tomorrow you sell them the other case of this. They have not finished that other one, and so on and so forth. And then your order value might go down per trip, but total business in the quarter
will go up.
Yeah.
So all this information, like you're saying, it's a lot of data. It's a lot of data collection. Private sector is ahead.
Yeah.
Government needs this data for policy.
Yes.
Now we've got institutions in government that would be be able to collect the data and become custodians of data, and then use that to develop policy. You have SME authority, you have the SACCO regulatory authority, for example. You've got the Union of SACCOs.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have access to this? Now we have an entire ministry for cooperatives and MSMEs, right? You'd imagine that those people would have some office somewhere that is just looking at information that's coming in from, insights that they'd be getting from people like you, from others, so they can then see how do we even structure products called Hustler Fund, Product X. Do we have such?
At the moment, this is really competitive intelligence that most people will not share with you. So most companies will never want to tell you how much that outlet buys from me. If you go to the pharmaceutical industry, they would never tell you how much that pharmacy buys from me, for instance. So there's a certain level of trust that needs to be built before you can share that information. And also there's a certain way to anonymize it enough to be able to generate general insights, and but not
to be specific.
Not be specific that you actually jeopardize somebody else's business. Because if I know, if I'm Bidco and I know what my competitor is selling in that outlet, I might just send my best salesman to, stuff like that. So generally, you want to be able to. Everybody wants to share that information if it's going to help, especially if it's going to help unlock things like access to finance to those outlets, not at my cost. So if I'm the supplier, and by me sharing certain level of information, it helps you guarantee that outlet. Definitely, yes. And we can create structures that help secure sharing of that kind of information. Just one last thing.
No. Say even two more, please. Okay. Yes.
There's always, of course, a fear by most business people that the information you're sharing with me ends up somewhere in Times Tower.
Yeah.
And it's an irrational fear because that's a turnover. That's turnover. No, it's turnover. It's not, okay, so let's just say there's room for us to make that a little bit.
It's extremely rational, that thought.
Turnover or not.
Yeah.
So there's a figure at the end of that turnover.
Okay, please no, but the point is, that's why I'm saying we need to have a way of sharing that information in a secure way and also completely anonymized so that it's not targeting any particular person, but it helps, let's say, with the formulation of policy or implementation of that kind of policy.
See, what I wanted to ask was, we are now talking about competition, really. This is what we've been alluding to. And the theory of competition in economics is supposed to benefit the consumer. Because the theory is that competition helps lower down prices. Is that true in this country? Because even I'm pegging it on what you're saying, because it looks to me like even with the information, what you're likely to see is a collusion by the people who actually produce and supply. So the end user actually benefits because instead of them competing and the price going down, they collude.
It's possible. And especially when the decisions are, you see, what I was saying earlier about these very formal economies, which are forced to become more efficient by the market. The market will reward stocks based on how efficiently they are running their businesses. In our market, most of these companies are private.
Yes.
Most of these players are private. So rather than driving efficiency, sometimes it might go in the other way. We might decide, me and you,
let's collude. Cartel.
Yeah, exactly.
Cartels in this country are the ones that run this. Anyway, Fred, thank you. Thank you very much, Fred, for coming, for sharing the insights. Now we know at least a bit better on the small enterprises. We see those shops. Did you ever know, City, that our retailers are more than retailers in EU combined? Those shops and kiosks.
I heard that today, and all manner of things happened to my brain. Because I then realized, but wait, putting it very simply, it means we can do more things than these people can do.
That's indeed. It's our power. We've got our power in it. Fred, Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Fred Jogu is an expert on financing small and micro businesses. He's a COO of Coral Action Africa. We've been talking about how the hustlers can get better financing for their businesses. Keep it here for more. Good morning, 8 a.m. We talk about the debt crisis in Kenya.
Spice up your life.
Good morning, this is Newswire. I'm Dennis Alceto. The Cabinet has sanctioned a cholera vaccination exercise targeting 2 million people amid rising cases. Following a meeting chaired by President William Ruto, the country's top decision-making organ stated that the vaccination will be carried out in Nairobi, Machakos and Garissa. According to the Cabinet memo, these are high-risk areas and all Kenyans are being urged to continue exercising high hygiene standards as was prescribed at the height of COVID-19 disease containment measures. There has been an increase of cholera infections in the country, with 8 people dying in a recent outbreak within Nairobi. Cholera is an acute diarrheal illness caused by infection of the intestine with Vibrio cholerae bacteria. People can get sick when they swallow food or water contaminated with cholera bacteria. The infection is often mild or without symptoms, but can sometimes be severe and life-threatening. Meanwhile, 31 new cases of cholera have been reported in Garissa County. So far, the total number of cholera cases has reached 320. The infection was first reported in the Hagdera refugee camp and has resulted in 4 deaths. The most affected are children aged 1 and 14 years.
The cases now have also spilled over to the host community. So we are having several of our sub-counties now that have been affected. We have cases in, of course, the Dab sub-county, Fafi, and also Garissa sub-county.
Juzi siku ya Alhamisi, mtoto saa 10:30 usiku alianza kuhara na kutapika. Akashinda hiyo siku ya Alhamisi mzima. Hasa ndio kufikia Ijumaa asubuhi saa 2 ndio akaaga dunia.
Meanwhile, 3 cases of cholera have been reported in Tana River County.
Nimeleta watu 5, bibi yangu na watoto yangu 3 na dada yangu. Kufika hapa, serikali imesema mnunue dawa na sina pesa, sina kazi yoyote mimi niko naye. Nilikuwa nimechoma makaa naye serikali imeharamisha.
We continue to urge all Kenyans to be careful and observe high levels of hygiene. The National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetangula has directed the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning to conduct approval hearings of nominees to the Commission on Revenue Allocation by December 6th. In a communication during the plenary sitting, Wetangula indicated that the committee should expeditiously undertake the approval hearings and report back to the House before the constitutional deadline. The nominees were selected from a pool of 139 applicants who expressed interest in forming part of the agency that is tasked with recommending the basis for equitable sharing of revenues raised nationally between the national and the county governments. If approved, the new team will take over after the term of members serving at the commission ends on the 31st of December. And the Nairobi City County Alcoholic Drinks Control and Licensing Board has thrown their weight behind Governor Johnson Sakaja's move to revoke liquor licenses for notorious nightclubs in residential areas. According to the board's chairperson, Frank Mbogo, bar owners had reneged on resolutions passed last month between them, residents' associations, and Deputy Governor Njoroge Mushiri. The county government, he said, is not against people doing business, but they must operate within the parameters of the law. Last month, the Nairobi County Liquor Licensing Board announced it was to deregister 43 nightclubs over noise pollution. And Interior Cabinet Secretary Professor Kithure Kindiki made an impromptu visit to the Immigration Department in Nyeri House to inspect services at the headquarters that issues passports and other essential documents. This follows complaints from members of the public about long delays in the processing passports, visas, work permits and other vital documents, leading to the protest from frustrated would-be travelers, potential expatriates and other inconvenienced clients. Service seekers who interacted with the CS complained of slow services and long waiting period and pleaded for more service counters to expedite the issuance processes and investments in better equipment to clear the backlog. They hailed the introduction of an online booking platform for biometrics appointments but complained of long queues. Immigration officers, however, attributed these to the high demand for passports by Kenyans, a deadline hoping to beat the government deadline for new look documents. The head of corporate affairs at Immigration, Ambassador Isaac Ochieng, attributed the delays in the printing of passports to a breakdown of one of their printers. He said the department requires 150 million shillings to acquire a new machine. The CS said the government is keen to streamline the issuance of passports and other immigration department services and will secure the requisite resources and reforms to it a reality. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Asseto. Good morning.
The Spice Newswire is brought to you by Samsung Galaxy Watch 5 Pro. Go ahead and get yours today. It's your time.
102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
The rain is back in Nairobi and we're looking at heavy traffic that's coming in bumper to bumper strong on the Thika Superhighway, and then it's going to connect all the way to Murang'a Road, and then it connects on the Globe Cinema overpass, underpass, everywhere pass. Into the CBD, it's busy. It spilled over from Jogo Road to Landis Road, and I don't even know where. Lusaka Road also is getting a hit from that, and we're looking at this entire quadrant then of Likoni, Lunga Lunga, Jogo, and then going out towards the Likoni interchange on Mombasa Road. Heh! My goodness, it's a tricky morning. Now that we're looking at traffic, coming into Westlands also, it's starting to get tight. James Gishuru out towards Wayaki Way. We're looking at parts of Kieleshwa out towards Lavington, Mzima Springs, and then in the other direction as well, coming off of Valley Arcade. Busy morning there. Mombasa Road also moving slowly at that Utali, or rather, I said Utali, I meant Imara. That drift and then getting out towards General Motors. But then you'll be all right until you get to the Nyeri Stadium roundabout, and then you're going to slow down some again as you get into the city. We are in traffic hour proper, and it's going to be that way for a while. Let's know what's going on where you are. Talk to us this morning. SpiceFM, KE, Twitter.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the
8 minutes after 8. Good morning and welcome to the third hour of the Situation Room. This morning we are live from Spice FM. We're also live on KTN Home and live online as we are every weekday morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. This is a pure talk show on radio in the morning discussing very many things that affect the country. So we've just been talking about the Hustler Fund that should be launched today by the president. And then we get the details of that. Then also yesterday we had the CS for the National Treasury speaking about our debt situation and how we are able to, whether we are able to finance our operations or not, and what he needs to cut back on and why he needs to cut back on that, because he basically says we have reached that point where borrowing is becoming a bad word in government. So we want to talk about debt sustainability and our debt issue and situation, whether the strategies being unveiled and being rolled out by the government are actually workable. Are those strategies workable? Ndu has been bragging about her Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 4.
Absolutely, because I want you to flip over to this side of life.
Flip where?
Flip here.
To the side, that side of life.
Exactly.
All right.
where you will experience many, many wonderful things. And the Z Flip 4 allows you to do just that. So if you know what, it was Thanksgiving and then there was Black Friday. So we're looking into Black November. 150,000 shillings is what this phone would ordinarily go for. And we're looking at saying, you know what, until December 7th, you can buy it with a discount of 37,500 shillings.
A discount of 37,000?
500 shillings.
Connie, how much is the phone?
150,000.
Oh.
So you take 150,000 minus 37,500, Bob, and you get what?
150,000 minus 37,000.
Okay. So if you're not quick math silver this morning, that's what you get it for. 113,500, Bob, is what you would now be able to buy this for. Imagine those things that you're able to do, CT, when you take your selfies without hands. Look, no hands, selfie. And taking all those videos and doing all those wonderful things. Now you get that massive discount because of Black November. From now until Friday, you can do that for just that amount of money. Some 7 days to go, 8 days to go. You can do that. Great discount from Samsung. Black November for the Samsung Z Flip 4.
One of the best phones in the world at present.
Indeed.
One of the very best. Haya, tutaweka hiyo pesa hapo.
Sindio?
37,000 Bob discount is a huge discount, my friend.
Exactly.
It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. You can take that and put it into Centum real estate and start owning a home.
That discount.
Two Rivers. Yes.
And then you can take pictures of said home that itatoa your nyumba.
Yes, at Two Rivers.
Yes, you can even use it as a deposit to buy a Galaxy Samsung Tab S8 Ultra.
Why wouldn't you just allow a woman to be great?
See, I'm helping.
Allow me to be great.
You don't see the help.
City.
Yes, please.
Tell us the proverb.
Okay.
It's from Guinea.
Guinea.
Conakry.
Gentlemen, it is not Guinea-Bissau. It is not Equatorial Guinea.
Do you know that there was Guinea corn?
Yes, I heard
Guinea
of it.
fowl.
Yes. Not that one. Not Papua New Guinea. This is just Guinea. Okay? Right. It is God who drives away flies from a tailless animal. That's the proverb from Guinea for this morning.
It is God.
Yes, the tailless animals who are visiting us today have smiled at that proverb. Yes.
You what?
Well,
tailless animals.
We established that the three of us were tailless. So if other human beings join us, they're also tailless.
It's only God.
It's only God who drives away the flies.
Our guest this morning, John O'Duke, who is a policy research and advocacy officer at the Institute for Social Accountability, and David Owiro, research, public policy and advocacy expert. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Welcome to Kenya's Biggest Conversation. It's good to have you here.
Karibuni
sana. John, there are other people who work at TISA. You know, we know Wanjiru Gekonyo of TISA. She has now left TISA, right? And there's a new executive director.
Yes.
Okay. We'll bring her here. Karibuni sana to the show.
Asante sana.
Right. When you say that someone is a policy, research and advocacy expert, what exactly does that mean? I want to start with you, David. What do you do?
Thank you so much. Interesting question. Well, the kind of work that we do is basically generate or use policy evidence to craft alternative policy solutions, which we then present to decision makers and advocate with the decision makers so that we have better outcomes and impacts for the goals that we are looking to achieve.
So you're basically doing what Kipra does, but from the other side, from outside government.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
You conduct your own research, then you formulate policy proposals, then now we present that to government.
Yes.
And
both generating own research as well as utilizing other available research.
Other research as available.
Yeah.
All right. Now, we've been talking about the debt situation in the country for a while. And, we now have a new administration in his office. Ukuri Yatani is no longer the CS. Well, the PSs are still the same until the new ones are vetted and then appointed. And we'll have new bosses at the National Treasury. but they're taking up a debt that's there. And the government has been talking about things that they want to do with debt. Just bringing us up to speed, what is it that Kenya Kwanza has said about our current debt situation and the situation going forward, David?
Right. Thank you so much. Well, the information that we can glean from their manifesto is that they have a very good understanding of where we are. They do acknowledge that we are in sort of like a strenuous debt situation. Some have termed it even a debt abyss, you can imagine. And that they acknowledge that this debt situation was mostly propagated by debt that was used to fund projects, and that these projects didn't have much meaningful impact. From an economic perspective, it didn't have a lot of multiplier effects to benefit people, particularly things that people care for. So they acknowledge that this debt needs to be reduced. The second thing that they say is that the debt composition needs to be changed. They do acknowledge that the biggest proportion of debt is actually domestic debt, stating that domestic debt actually comprises about 80% of the current debt outlay that we have. And they have gone further to state that actually, if you look at our debt repayments, basically what we pay every year, that number right now is just over 1 trillion. So that makes up a proportion of about 64% of what we raise in terms of revenues. And so that's quite a dire statistic. And so they acknowledge that this situation needs to change. And they use the words that we have to stop the digging. So that's all interesting to say. And it's all quite positive. It resonates with what Okoa Uchumi has been saying. Basically that our debt levels, if it continues to be so, will be unsustainable and will very quickly get into debt distress. What remains to be seen, of course, is the interventions that they want to put in place. They talk about reducing our expenditures, which is basically austerity. And they mention a number, 300 billion. We do not know where that number comes from. And we do not know the impact that number will have. What we are concerned about is what they deem as non-essential expenditures. What are these non-essential expenditures? Because if non-essential expenditures are things that Kenyans care for and things that have great impact for Kenyans, then we very quickly will have a problem.
According to you, John, what are these non-essentials? I mean, because if we're talking about strategies for the current government to be able to get Kenya out of, in my opinion, which already is teetering on debt distress, economic distress, what are some of these things then that must be clawed back on? We don't know where this 300 billion is going to come from. If you're looking at it from an economic point of view, where should it come from?
Okay, first of all, allow me to state that the current debt situation in Kenya, it's not a Kenya Kwanza problem. It's something that has been there from the previous regime, and it's something that now the current regime has inherited, and it's a situation that presently, as it is, they have to face it head on. In terms of maybe areas where, because the president talked about the cut expenditure, that's by 300 billion. Yeah, there's still question about areas where that will come from. But then again, based on the current fiscal landscape, it's very tight, and one thing that we as Okoa Uchumi campaign really champion for is amidst all this crisis that's currently happening, you're calling for the issue of priority spending. So in as much as they're focusing on the cuts, I think some of the key areas, or rather, yes, we've asked about the non-essentials, but let me speak to the essential areas that they shouldn't touch on. And this specifically speaks to social spending, things relating to education, health, water, sanitation, and social protection issues, because these are issues that really speak to the quality of life. They affect the quality of life of the population as a whole. So these are some of the areas that the cuts shouldn't touch on. But then again, if we talk about the non-essential areas that maybe these cuts could go into, maybe could maybe speak to areas around minimizing, maybe as alluded to from what we see, things like reducing maybe
travel
allowances and everything. Yeah.
But even as they say this, that we need to cut back on some of these non-essential. We've heard it before. I mean, this is not the first time a government in the Republic of Kenya has talked about cutting back. We have heard it before. We are going to reduce the fleet of cars that we use so that people are going to be using carpooling. That was Uhuru Kenyatta, finance minister then. We are going to reduce the CCs for vehicles. So if you're ministers and senior government officers, you're going to have a maximum of 1,800 CCs. And if you have a vehicle that's a four-wheel drive that's more than 1,800 CC, it's a pool vehicle. We've heard it before. Did it come to pass? We saw the Passats, but we still saw the fuel guzzlers. Hi. Just during this time of COVID, they talked about the same thing. We are going to cut back. What we need to do is now, of course, because COVID has shut down the world, there's no foreign travel, so our expenses on travel have reduced because there are no meetings as well. We're not doing in-person meetings, so our expenses on that have reduced. But did they really reduce? So even now, when you hear the government saying we're cutting back on non-essentials, do you have anything that you can actually go with and say, these guys are different from the previous guys? Is there anything?
I think on that, that's an interesting question, because if you look at the current regime, the head of the Kenya Kwanza administration was part of the previous regime where we saw ballooning of our fiscal position, and then on top of that, most of the individuals in this government, they're also part of the previous regime under different capacities. So it will be really interesting to see how they implement these proposals that they make. Because from my point of view, I really feel that there's a lot of sloganeering around these proposals with little content or depth on the interventions around their implementation. Yeah.
David, is there anything specific that you feel this ought to go from the current budget?
Interesting question. I think a number of things. First of all, we have to go back and answer this question. What does non-essential expenditures mean? For me, a budget at national level, everything should be priority. As in, you cannot spend on something that is not a non-essential. So even the usage of that word, for me, I'm triggered. Because it means that even government itself sees the games they're playing in our budget policy making. And, just to go back to the issues you've raised around some of the initiatives that they've taken to reduce budget expenditure, we've seen those initiatives actually turn around to be actually entrepreneurship opportunities, where someone is looking to supply, say, whatever commodities, whatever vehicles, and we don't see actual impact on a reduction in terms of budget as is intended. So we have to go back and see, okay, how do we, and it boils down, it distills to this conjoined problem that we have of corruption. Because really, if you look at the project spending, the mess we are in right now was basically to create corruption opportunities for people. And even the emergence of this term of budgeted corruption is really because people saw opportunities within our budget formulation process to also include their pet projects where they could make a buck or two. And so we have to come at it from all sides. We have to ensure that, whenever we are prioritizing our budget and selecting what is important, what is essential for Kenyans, that is actually national interest. And that has to be buttressed by an equal push for more transparency, more accountability, even within those projects that are funded by debt.
When you talk about debt, and the stories about debt, the thing that seems to also take center stage in the discussion is how economists differ in thought as to what should be done. There are those who propose austerity measures and say these austerity measures are the way to go. And then another group comes up and debunks it completely and says, this one, either there was some data which was omitted or they simply presented what they considered was favorable. And yet, even as these discussions rage, whether it is in the form of a paper or an op-ed in a news outlet, it doesn't answer the real problems that countries have. Now, there are fundamentals, for instance. A country like Kenya, the one way that the previous government and this particular government seems to believe that they can help us get out of this so-called debt trap that we're in is by taxing us to death, okay? Now, there is no evidence to support that particular method of doing things, that raising taxations in a country helps grow the economy. There is nothing that you can point to and say, this is a country that grew and developed and became what it was because people were taxed to smithereens. There is no such thing. Yeah. And yet, it's a policy that they seem to continue following. You wake up and there's a new tax. You wake up and there's something else coming there. Now, how does one help a country and the thinkers in a country like ours understand the balance between this tax and also ensuring that there's sufficient circulation of money within the country so that this process of economic growth that we talk about can actually happen? How does one advise them? You are the experts in understanding financial matters.
Fantastic question. So it's interesting that you mentioned the fundamentals, the economic fundamentals. And really, when it comes to development, economic development and growth, the two main drivers are really that consumer demand, which is disposable income, the money circulating in people's hands, and government spending. What we seem to be going towards is we are raising both, we're trying to reduce government expenditure, so that you have a smaller budget, therefore a smaller budget deficit or even a zero budget deficit budget, whilst at the same time also increasing taxes. And what does that do? It reduces that disposable income.
Yes, it does.
And therefore money circulating will be less and less. And that's a recipe for disaster, because we'll very quickly go into like a vicious cycle where you've got not only depressed demand coming from less expenses by government, but also just reduced consumer demand because taxes have reduced disposable incomes. And so what for us we are pushing for is, if we look at the debt problem, it's not a revenue issue. Therefore, we should not be trying to raise more revenue. Yes, you can seek to increase the tax base, basically bringing other previously untaxed people into the tax bracket. But if you are really expanding and targeting those indirect taxes, consumer taxes, what that ends up to do is you reduce disposable incomes.
What I find interesting, even when we discuss these matters, is how is it that it escapes the people who are charged with these functions that when you have increased economic activity, the base of taxable income increases, and yet they go about the business of reducing the very thing that would enhance these economic processes, which is the money, and yet expect to collect more money. Explain to me that logic. How does it make sense?
Well, it's really the institutional incentives that we've set up. So in our push to pursue efficiency, we've put in very ambitious targets. In this case, if you look at almost all revenue raising or revenue collecting, revenue administering institutions such as KRA or even your county revenue offices, there is really a push for more and more tax collection. And so, the targets are always going to be higher and higher the following year. And that sort of escapes, the initial issue, which is really, you can push a people, you can push a citizenry to the wall where really there's nothing much left that they can do. And your tax collection measures end up to be punitive. And we've seen that happening even at a micro level within our county governments, where the push for collecting fees, charges, cess and all that really just runs people out of business. So that's the balance that has to be done within our tax policy. And this has to come from a higher office. It has to be articulated at the national level by our planners that, hey, here is the taxation policy measures and our objectives that we're going for. And we've modeled it to the extent that it will not negatively impact our citizenry, both the private sector, the industry, as well as the people, so that there's a fine balance that we are able to walk.
Let's take a break, gentlemen. David Owiro is a research and public policy and advocacy expert. And John O'Duke is also policy research and advocacy officer from the Institute for Social Accountability, both from Okoa Uchumi Coalition, Vugu Vugu la Okoa Uchumi. We're talking about debt crisis. Are Kenya Kwanza's debt strategies workable? That's the question we're asking ourselves at 8:30. About debt, that is one thing. Let's talk about investment. How about invest in owning a home at Two Rivers? You know Two Rivers. You see the mall. You see, Two Rivers is not just the mall. It's a mixed-use development, right? So there are commercial properties there, and there are offices, and there are residential houses being put up. And Centum Real Estate is basically saying you can come to Two Rivers and we talk about you purchasing one of these properties that we have here, one of the homes that we have here, just a deposit of as little as 495,000 shillings, then you pay the balance in flexible installments. And because it's Black November, they are giving a discount of 200,000 shillings once you go and purchase a home. So your discount here, Samsung Galaxy ilikuwa
37,500.
37,500.
Yes.
It's about discounts. Centum Real Estate, Two Rivers residential houses, 200,000 shillings discount. And you are able to live in that place where there's adequate water supply, there's power backup. It's within reach of very many other places. It neighbors Runda and the Gigiri Nairobi diplomatic zone. It's a good place. And if you just want to buy it for investment, Centum Real Estate can also then manage it for you. So they tell you, all right, you purchase a unit, we will manage the tenancy on your behalf and give you the income. Deal or no deal?
I say deal.
Yeah? Big deal, isn't it?
Give me a big deal.
We'll be back shortly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Yolanda Mulo and DJ Absolute. When the gang is together, you know it's
Sugar and Spice.
Great vibes, conversations, a lot of humor. I like to say we don't give an F, we give 3 Fs.
You and I are in this relationship, so it is me to tell you who we are.
When you ask a chick, how many guys have you been in? She's like, including you. If it's fun, it's funky, it's fresh, you're definitely going to catch it here. I don't know what you do every day from 11 a.m. to 3 o'clock. If I were you, I'd tune in to SpiceFM 94.4.
I want you on my team.
So does everybody else.
Yeah.
All right, looking at cloudy conditions in Nairobi, we'll see highs of 26 today. We're also going to see highs of 24 coming out of Nakuru. Sunny conditions at 17 now in Eldoret, highs of 24 and lows of 13. And Nyeri is cloudy at 16, highs of 24. Rain showers now back in Mombasa at 27, highs of 31, and 31 will be the high in a rainy Malindi at 28. It's 21 and sunny in Kisumu. We'll see highs of 28, and 28 will also be the high in Kakamega, where it's sunny at 22. Light rain in Kampala at 20, highs of 26, and it'll go to highs of 31. In Dar es Salaam, where it's raining at 28. Johannesburg is sunny at 17, highs of 26 and lows of 13. And mostly clear conditions at 24 in Lagos. We'll go to highs of 32, and 30 will be the high in a mostly sunny Kinshasa at 22. Traffic's flowing not too badly on Langata Road, and it's going to go out towards Aerodrome, which you then get stuck on Uhuru Highway as you approach at Haile Selassie Junction. Rilo Dingawa is taking some of it away from those who ran away from Langata Road and then connecting to Ngong Road, which is pretty busy all the way from that junction coming from Karen. Also, Landis Road is an absolute mess this morning. Inbound traffic. Some folks have decided to turn around and go outbound. Don't know where they're going if they're trying to get into the city, but still looks pretty tight there. On the Thika Superhighway, it had ceased, and here it is, back again. Bumper to bumper, all the way then from that Allsops Junction out towards the CBD. It's also busy on Kiambu Road. It's touching on Muthaiga Square, as also then joins the folks who are trying to get into the city. We're still in traffic hour. Let's see what happens in a short while. SpiceFM, KE on Twitter.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
24 minutes to 9. The conversation continues with David Owiro and John O'Duke. We're talking about the debt situation in the country. The Kenya Kwanza strategies workable, achievable, realistic? Are they or are they not? John, are they not?
In terms of the proposals, maybe just looking at the whole borrowing scenario that we are in as a country, maybe I think one of the things that the government should really consider to maybe provide a remedy to the current debt situation in the country. I'd borrow from there is one of the premier civil society organizations in Africa that deals with the issues around public issues around debt and other finance-related areas. That's the Africa Forum and Network for Debt and Development, AFRODAD. And throughout its work for the past 25 years in this area, they came up with a debt management toolkit. It's called the African Borrowing Charter. So this charter, the aim is towards attaining sustainability in balancing public debt levels with the necessity for accelerating inclusive development, and also at the same time ensuring that service delivery is enhanced in Africa in general. So I think the toolkit speaks to some principles that would be essential for the government maybe to borrow from in terms of when they consider borrowing. And the toolkit has about the 9 principles, but maybe today I'd focus on around 4. Maybe the first one is urgency, and that principle, it speaks to, the government is an agent of the state. So as the government gets into these contractual agreements around debt, I think one of the things they need to consider is public interest. There are because most of these people in government, they're elected to represent the public, so they're our agents. So our interest has to be considered in this. Then secondly, the issue of legal framework, where you find that issues relating to debt contraction and use should be anchored on constitutionalism. And in that, on our Kenyan context, I think it speaks to the principles underlined under the Public Finance Management Act. So a borrowing should consider that. And then the other thing is the issue of transparency and accountability. And this one thing that TISA and the Okoa Uchumi Coalition is very it's something that the TISA and Okoa Uchumi champions, the issue of transparency and accountability. And now this touches on approval of this debt, procurement, and the oversight that comes with all kinds of borrowing and other forms of financing. And this particularly speaks to, when you talk about oversight, the role of critical oversight institutions come into play. And by institutions, I mean we have the Parliament, Office of Auditor General. We also have the Debt Management Committee. And when you just look at the issue of oversight, I think from where we are, I think maybe we could start looking towards maybe having an independent, or rather a separate institution, separate from the ministry, the treasury, to just focus on the issue of debt, like we have KRA and taking care of revenue collection. So let's say if you have such an institution that their primary focus is on issue of debt, so that we can move from the current scenario where we see that mostly debt, our debt is handled. It's more of just putting the statistics out there. But what goes beyond the statistics is very minimal. So I think if you have such, then it will take into account tackling the issue of debt just beyond posting these statistics. Then the other principle that is crucial is on disclosure and publication. And this particularly speaks to relevant terms and conditions of these agreements that the government gets into. With these agreements that we get into, debt agreements, mostly we've seen the debt situation, it skyrockets, especially when there is crisis. And when there is crisis, as a government, we are at a point of vulnerability. We are desperate to respond to the shocks that comes with, let's say, if you have a crisis. And if you look just at the structure of economies in Africa in general, the structure makes it hard to respond to shocks that come with this crisis. So this maybe now makes us inclined towards borrowing, and so this information needs to be disclosed. In as much as what we've seen is that there are lots of restriction to this, but then again, the toolkit speaks to the fact that these restrictions should be applied reasonably, because debt is something that the brunt of it affects the citizens the most. So the details that surround these agreements should be made public, so that this helps in scrutinizing the government in terms of how they're using this debt, and also just for the sake of transparency and accountability. Then maybe interest of time, maybe I'll also just mention the other maybe crucial principles of this, maybe in terms of management of debt resources. It's crucial, and also the issue of avoiding overborrowing, which I think...
I have to stop you and ask you, at what point do you overborrow? And at what point have you borrowed enough? And at what point have you not borrowed enough?
And if I could jump in and ask that question, because we're talking about, so in the event that Kenya could borrow, and I know you had a couple of points that maybe we can come back to in just a minute.
Yeah.
But we're looking at that situation that in the event that Kenya would borrow again, this and this and this is what ought to happen. And maybe you can also jump in here, David. But today, the today situation is that the CS Dungu has said there is no room to borrow. So as opposed to us being prescriptive for a futuristic situation when Kenya would borrow, what ought to happen today when Kenya cannot borrow? It's being prescribed by the Treasury that there is no room to borrow. Kenya is currently trying to mop up some shillings here to be able to apply to an already dire situation. We're going to go into the budgeting process already. It's in its throes right now, right? To then be announced, later on next year. But what ought to happen today with the situation whereby borrowing is not an option? The schedule for debt is, already in course, debt payments already on course. And the question is, the strategies that the government has in place today, is it essentially going to be, the messiah for the economic situation in which Kenya finds itself today? Will it work? We understand that it's not the Kenya Kwanza government who got Kenya in this mess that it's in. However, it's in a mess. Cannot borrow, has debt to pay, has to revive the economy and get it on its feet and secure livelihoods.
In the middle of a drought.
In the middle of a drought. In the middle of crises without number, coming off the back of COVID-19. How is it going to happen? Will these strategies work for all of these things that are happening simultaneously back to back? And I think that's the question. Will the strategies work? Not in the future if Kenya will borrow. Today. When Kenya
can they
borrow.
work or can they not?
Yeah, I think in terms of what might be important or what needs to happen now, I think the issue of expenditure is the elephant in the room. How we utilize, how the government utilizes the resources that it has. Because currently the fiscal space is very tight. So I think one of the areas of consideration is maybe pushing for investments towards more productive and sectors. Like, let's say if the government invests or rather channels resources towards maybe growing of industries, manufacturing, because these are avenues for revenue mobilization. And if this is something that can be properly implemented, I think as an economy will be in a position to mobilize substantial revenue that could be used to sort of pay off some of the debts that we currently have, and also going forward reduce our over-reliance on debt.
On that debt.
Yes.
David, so you said that you people as researchers and policy advocates, you also come up with proposals. So first of all, answer that question. Are the current strategies realistic? Could they work? And what would your proposal be? If today David Owiro was the CS in the National Treasury, what would he do?
Right. So, of course, the simple answer is cut expenditure, because government expenditure is what has gotten us here. We have to cut our coat to our size. So that means we have to relook at our budget and identify what are the highest of highest priorities and focus on those. And a key guidance for me, a key principle would be much of the investment that has been done in the past has been around infrastructure development. Right now, we have to focus on the productive economy. What is it that if we invest in would enhance our productive value? So that would be one guiding criteria. The other criteria would be, cut off the fluff, which, when we were starting, we identified it as being, these extravagant things that we do as a government,
That's
which are not
non-essential.
the so-called non-essentials, so that we find better innovative ways of working. And really, you can see what drives those non-essentials, what drives the per diems and the allowances, really is a wage problem, because people are not earning enough. So the bureaucracy is incentivized to go for
look for other ways
of putting something in their pockets. So that would be the start. The other point that has to be done alongside it is we have to talk to our lenders. We honestly have to talk to our lenders. We have to come to the table for them to we articulate the issue the current situation we are in, so that we get moratoriums. Because honestly, if 64% of our revenues
is going
towards
debt.
Yes, I mean, where would we have the breathing room to even grow, to even invest in the things that matter for Kenyans? So
our biggest lender is China. So have a conversation with...
It's not unprecedented.
Rwanda just got something the other day.
Yeah, it's not unprecedented because even in some African nations have been able to say, hey, this one we think we will not pay, to be honest. Yes, we see the investment, but this one we will not pay.
But David, is are China really the people we borrow the most from? I thought you mentioned that most of the money we borrow is domestic.
Yeah, so if you look at it from external borrowing.
Oh, from the external borrowing.
They are the biggest, yeah.
Well, let me ask this question, because again, what you've just said, that idea was put forth by two individuals, and that idea has caused problems. A gentleman by the name of Reinhardt, another guy called Rogoff. They proposed this, and many countries took it up. A gentleman by the name of George Osborne, who later became Chancellor of the Exchequer, cited this person regularly. Unfortunately, their thinking about borrowing, cutting down, and the thinking around it have continuously and continually been debunked. That's the unfortunate thing. Yet, I look at a country like Japan. You say we borrow domestically 70%, or thereabouts?
Yeah, 80%.
So 80%?
Yeah.
It's more than Japan. Japan, the equivalent of their central bank, takes 70% of their bonds. The rest, Japanese banks, trust funds, and all this. Now, you are the people who understand finance, and you know the benefit of this. These vagaries of the global market, they're shielded from because it's domestic borrowing. These fluctuations that have to do with all sorts of things, they're borrowed in yen. If the bulk of our borrowing is local, how is it that then this 20% that we borrow externally, how does it affect us so much? What is it about it that makes it affect us so much?
Right, so two things that happen.
Yes.
The first is our external funding is mostly in foreign currency, right? So we are faced with that volatility. As you know, our shilling is not free floating as much as we like it to be.
What is it, free flying?
It is managed. It's a managed, so-called managed float.
Yes.
So that has its impacts in our economy. The second thing that we have to acknowledge is we are an importing country, largely importing.
We are net importers.
Yeah. So that means that we utilize forex exchange. We need forex, right? So external financing therefore affects us so much because not only are we borrowing in a foreign currency, but our chances of earning it, the opportunities of earning that foreign currency is also quite limited. Unlike the situation we've explained with Japan. Now, Japan, you can imagine, it's a big economy, and the domestic economy itself is a thriving one. They are, I would say, even net exporters.
You've gotten to the heart of the matter. How did they get there?
That's the
Our
question.
president usually went to Korea, very compared with us in the 60s.
Yeah.
They are there. How did they get there? Because we are following policies now, talking about getting to the situation where the Asian tigers are. But are these policies that we have now the sort of policies that will take us there, really?
Good question. and that's really what is up for debate. For me, in my perspective, from my reading of economics, where we are today, we have to reset. And that's really the biggest task that this current administration has. We have to look at it as a transition moment where we reset and get our fundamentals right. And getting our fundamentals right means that even from a productive economy perspective, we have to invest in those things that generate value for us. We cannot continue to be a continuously consuming economy because that's what we've evolved to. And we've left the traditionally productive sectors of the economy to falter behind. And we have a big opportunity because Kenya geographically is well situated, particularly with the service sector within the region. And so we have a starting point. I would say a lot of things are going well for us. So the task today for economists today is really to think about, how do we get the fundamentals right? And one of the things has to be that we have to, rejig our borrowing framework so that we borrow for things that matter to us and the things that are impactful for the opportunities we are looking for. We have to invest in the productive economy so that we put money in people's pockets, create employment.
Yes. I'm in full agreement. How do you get money into people's pockets? There are tools the government can use, the tools the government has at its disposal through the central bank. Interest rates. Because if you reduce interest rates, very many things happen automatically. Things become affordable. Yes, go ahead.
Good question, and you have your finger on it. The issue with interest rates is that because the government is so much in the domestic market, we can't have favorable interest rate that encourage that borrowing. We can't have it. So rather than going via the central bank or monetary policy, the solution is really to stop borrowing. That's the solution, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing, and you alluded to this, with the special fund, the Hustlers Fund that is being launched today. If you look at these special funds, the primary motive is really so that you can provide a solution for those marginalized, right? Mm-hmm. So you're looking for these special groups whom in ordinary circumstances are unable to access finance, right? However, all of us can't access finance. So even if you
we all marginalized.
Yes. So if you cater to that marginal constituency, really it won't solve the issue because all of us can't access it. And the reason we can't access it, all of us, is because the government is borrowing too much in the domestic market. So to your question, the answer really is in government to stop borrowing from the domestic market or to scale it back.
A lot of these things we talk about is that government should do. And these government that we speak of is made up of individuals who can think about these processes in the same manner in which we think and speak of them today. It's like going to a doctor and you're sick and the doctor prescribes medication. The truth of the matter is that if you do not take that medication, you will get sicker and at some point you may die. The question is, if these things that we are talking about that ought to happen, stop the borrowing in the domestic market, reduce interest rates, put money in the hands of the drivers of the economy, essentially, which is maybe what the answer of this fund, by this fund, is supposed to be. If those things are not done, the situation will exacerbate. Kenya will fizzle into a state that will be then very difficult to get out of. That is what is going to happen if these things are not done. Now the question is, ought this not to happen in order for folks to sit up and take notice? Because we can talk about this until the cows come home, but until anything is done about it, the situation gets worse.
Yeah, maybe allow me to come in on that. I think
in about 30 seconds, because our hour is up.
Okay. Yeah, so I think in regards to that, I think the issue of political goodwill and governance comes to play, because I believe we have excellent policies that govern, or even just if you look at the Public Finance Management Act, it outlines principles that
all the laws and policies are in place.
Yes,
it's just the people to
the implementation,
come and do it.
Yes.
Yes or no? Do you feel this Kenya Kwanza has the intention to get it done? Yes or no?
I'd say the...
Yes or no?
He'd say yes or no.
or
perhaps.
Or perhaps, or maybe. Okay, we'll continue this conversation next time. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. John O'Duke and David Owiro are both research public policy advocates working with the Institute for Social Accountability. Keep it here for more conversations. It's 9 a.m.
Sustainable access to land and environmental justice. Speaking, Kilifi Mudavadi emphasized the government's commitment to constantly facilitate the court to enable more establishments of environment and land courts in every county. Mudavadi also noted that environmental considerations are not only important for sustainable development, but also enables holistic addressing of the plight of the most vulnerable in society. He affirmed the government's commitment to channel more resources towards establishment of what he termed as dedicated institutions to governance of land and environment. Police in Starehe, Nairobi County, arrested 5 men suspected to be notorious baggers in the area. This is after the Huruma Police Station OCS received intelligence reports about a group of suspected criminals hiding within Huruma grounds, where he launched an operation to flush them out. 3 of the 5 were arrested at the grounds, where upon search, each was found to be armed with extremely sharpened knife hidden under their trousers. They were identified as Kennedy Omai, Kelvin Mwaniki Lanjuki, and Bernard Musyoki. Lanjuki is also believed to have stabbed a local hospital staff member with a knife while robbing him while in company of 10 others. Some other 7 suspects escaped towards the St. Martin area, but police managed to nab 2 of them in a second operation. And the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, says crippling spikes in food and energy prices continue to hit East and Southern Africa, coupled by the devastating impact of climate change, is having a negative impact on the productive capacity of small-scale farmers. The Associate Vice President in charge of External Relations and Governance Department of IFAD, Satu Santala, says there is need to galvanize greater efforts in order to build farmers' resilience through partnerships. Speaking when farm organizations convened in Dar es Salaam, Suntala said the small-scale farmers in the East and Southern Africa need support, and that climate change is driving us to the brink of a catastrophe. While no country is immune to the impacts of climate change, rural communities in low-income countries are the most vulnerable and the least able to cope. She notes that the soaring prices for energy and inputs such as fertilizer and feedstock could be final straw in pushing small-scale farmers to the brink. And Kenyan companies are struggling to meet demand as high cost of inputs and weak shilling dim production capacity. According to the Central Bank of Kenya, only services sector firms reported higher sales in the 4th quarter of the year. The CEO's survey for November indicates that 45% of CEO in agriculture sector reported lower sales in the 4th quarter of the year when compared to the 3rd quarter year. On the other hand, 36.4% reported higher sales, while only 18.2% said sales remained flat between the 2 quarters. Higher sales were, however, reported in the services industry, where 41% of CEO said sales increased. 29.5% reported flat growth in sales or lower. In the manufacturing sector, 31.6% of respondents reported higher sales, while 42.1% said sales remained the same, as 26.3% reported lower sales when compared to the 3rd quarter of the year ending September 2022. Now, Ugandan opposition politicians and rights groups are calling for the release of opposition party president Joseph Kabuleta, who was arrested by security forces. Kabuleta's party is demanding an explanation for his arrest, which they likened to an abduction. Ugandan police accused him of promoting sectarianism, while Human Rights Watch accused authorities of muzzling government critics. A video circulating on social media showed 6 men walking into an office in which Kabuleta was meeting with 2 people. One of the men moved to grab Kabuleta's phone, and the 2 others grabbed him by his hands before he is whisked away in a black van. And Ukraine is urging NATO members to speed up weapons deliveries and help restore its shattered power grid, as Western allies vow to bolster support to aid Kyiv through winter in the face of Russia's attacks. Moscow has unleashed waves of strikes against Ukraine's energy infrastructure as its troops are pushed back on the ground, plunging millions of people into darkness. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba called for supplies of weapons, especially advanced air defense systems, to come faster as he joined two-day meeting of NATO foreign ministers in the Romanian capital, Bucharest. The appeal came as NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg accused Russian President Vladimir Putin of targeting infrastructure in a bid to use the winter as a weapon of war against Ukraine. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aceto. Good morning.
.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Okay, so we're looking at traffic on Jogo Road. It's still doing the thing. Landis Road is also pretty busy right about now. We are still in traffic hour, and looks like it'll be that way for some time. Rilo Dinga Way, then getting on towards the city, still continues to be crazy. All right, we'll keep checking at what the roads look like in a short while. SpiceFM KE on Twitter want to keep things moving this morning. Let's do just that.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned town, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your
7
day.
after 9. Good morning. Welcome to the final hour of The Situation Room. How you doing? City.
Mm-hmm.
That shoe of yours, my friend.
Yes. See ourselves.
Fiatu Fiakof Mengara.
Yes. Yes.
At the black shoe polish.
Yes.
No, your shoe is very, very easy.
Most people have no idea
Your
that
Kiatu
even in the times of my youth, which we all know is in the previous century, Kiwi existed.
It was still there.
Kiwi was there.
Yeah?
Yes.
Even before independence.
The independence thing, I'm not very certain of.
Mm.
I was too young to understand these things. But after independence, definitely it was there. And even when we talked about going to school, as you say correctly, it was black shoes.
It was black shoes.
It was Kiwi. And the thing is, some of those habits acquired in one's youth, one carries on with them even when you are now a little long in the tooth, as I am. So, my shoes are still being polished using Kiwi. It's as simple as?
It's just as simple as that.
As simple as that. Yes.
So when you tell someone go and buy Kiwi, basically you're not introducing them to anything new.
In my mind, I'm telling you to use something that has been proven over time and something that actually works. That's really what I'm saying.
It's known.
Use Kiwi.
Yeah.
It works.
Yes.
It does what it says it's going to do.
Yes.
And it might actually surprise you, it might do more. Yes, just don't apply it to your face. But it...
Today we can step up and shine. You used to step up and shine then.
Step up and shine.
My friend, this thing works. And The other thing that we figured out, if you actually use it, it even helps restore the leather. It's not just the leather shining. No. Somehow it's dead leather food. Okay? Yes, because once the leather is
It renews the black leather.
Yes, it does. It does.
Right. So we're saying Step Up and Shine. Kiwi is running a promotion and saying we'd like you to buy Kiwi. Under the lead, you will find a unique code. Check that unique code and hold the lid like this. Grab your phone like this, the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 4. Once you hold it like that, go to the digits. Do ding, star, ding, 4, ding, 5, ding, 9, ding, star, ding, 5, ding, hash. Makes a different noise.
And if that ding sound isn't there, then you're not doing what
you're not doing it right.
Okay, so I accept it. Ding.
Star 459 star 5 hash. Send that code. You stand a chance of winning airtime or data instantly or getting into the draw. One winner every week gets 35,000 shillings worth of school fees. School fees na economy. Pana mchezo. Pana mchezo. Now City, this lady has come and she's discombobulating us.
It is what
now I have to reassign your mic because she has just come and she has decided this is where you're going to be.
Turning everything upside down.
Completely, like just like that, like we're doing nothing.
Kuti amri.
Haya.
Producer akisema unati amri.
Haya.
Not complicated.
Okay.
Yes.
Now give us a proverb.
Proverb for the day from Guinea. Not New Guinea, not Papua New Guinea, not Guinea-Bissau, not Equatorial Guinea, just Guinea.
World has quite a lot of guineas, doesn't it?
See? Not Guinea fowl.
Or guinea fowl. You can use guinea corn, make ugali, guinea fowl, make soup.
So you have a guinea meal.
Not guinea.
Not guinea. Yes, not that particular. Yes. It is God who drives away flies from a tailless animal.
It is God who drives away flies from a tailless animal. So what's that proverb saying, basically?
That's why it's a proverb. You figure it out.
Sheesh.
Yeah, I know very well. What it means. You figure it out. Unless you ask me to tell you what I think.
What do you think?
Well, what I think is this. The proverb is right.
Kwenda huko. Kwenda huko. Beatrice Nyeri is an advocate. And she's not just a kawaida to advocate like that. She's a strategic litigation advocate. Strategic litigation what? Advocate. Where? At the Center for Rights, Education and Awareness, Crew Kenya. Good morning, Beatrice.
Good morning.
Karibu sana.
Asante.
Ni advocate ya wale wengine, we had advocates here, but those ones like to advocate for things. Yes. Are you advocate of representing or advocate of championing?
Both.
Both?
Yes.
Advocate of the High Court?
Advocate of the High Court and advocate for women's rights.
An advocate for women's rights.
Yes.
Now, Wakili, when you say you're a strategic litigation advocate, what does that mean? What is strategic litigation?
Strategic litigation is carried out in the usual courts, but what we do is take a number of carefully selected cases to court that represent a particular issue that is affecting a certain group of people or population. So for us at the Center for Rights, Education and Awareness, we focus on issues that are affecting women and file those cases with the aim of broader social, policy or legal change.
Okay. So you pick your causes carefully.
The cases, yes.
And you make sure that this is one that then represents a wider issue and is going to have a wider impact.
Indeed.
Out of the outcome of this one case.
Yes, for the group of women and girls.
For the group of women and girls. Now, we are in the middle of celebrating 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. And we want to talk about then survivors of sexual violence. Now, for avoidance of doubt, can we define sexual violence as it is recognized in law?
Okay, so the sexual violence is defined particularly in the Sexual Offences Act, and there are a number of crimes that are recognized under the sexual offences. So the particular definitions differ, and therefore I might not have. Maybe you give me until evening so that I define in particular.
In each.
Yes, so but there is rape, defilement, there is sexual assault, there is
What is sexual assault?
Within the Kenyan law, sexual assault is, for example, I don't know how to particularly explain it.
Start. We will assist you. Just start.
Okay, great. So when you cause your sexual organs to touch the body of another person without particularly penetration, that is sexual assault. So it becomes rape when there is penetration.
When there's penetration, it's rape.
Yes.
When it's touched without penetration, it's
Yes.
sexual assault.
Yes.
And this is your sexual organs, the reproductive organs.
There could be sexual organs. Sometimes it's a bit
Because
confusing.
I'm
because
heading into that. If someone
exactly.
bumps into you with a bum and it's sexually meaning, would it be...
Your bum is a sexual organ.
Is it?
Your chest is a sexual organ.
Is
your
it?
mouth is a sexual organ.
So at what point do we define this as sexual assault?
This is really where now I started saying you can't even... This hugging people out. You may be assaulting someone and you don't know.
Yes. But
So you see such cases as
bottom
well.
line is consent.
It's the issue of consent.
Yes.
And the issue of interpretation as well.
Interpretation as well.
Of the person who this has happened to.
But also the intention of the doer.
You wouldn't know the intention of the doer. You're accusing him.
Yeah, you're accusing
Or
them.
her.
And it's how you felt. If you felt violated within your person, then it was offensive. Yes.
You know, it gets really bizarre because even the hand is a sexual organ.
Yeah.
So, please go on. I can see where your thoughts are going. Let me allow the thoughts to go along the path that it has determined to follow.
Right. So, I mean, doesn't it then become very difficult for advocacy and litigation because the lines here are just blurry all over the place? I mean, we've heard stories and stories of folks who come and say, well, you know, I wasn't comfortable. In the moment, the individual could have been laughing, and so the other party would have felt that they were all right with it. But then to come back later and say something else, I mean, I'm sure you've dealt with cases like that. How then are you able to advocate and litigate for something for which the lines are blurry at best? Or is it clear what we're talking about here? That because I'm starting to think, oh my goodness, anybody that I may have ever hugged or anybody who may have ever hugged me, there could have been
if someone feels...
Yeah, this is it. If somebody feels that I was being violated in what ordinarily or in their mind would have been an innocent gesture, then how do you start to then draw legal lines around that?
Well, there's been a lot of work that has been done. There's a flurry of court cases that explain what the lines are and what they aren't, but it's something that keeps growing in terms of how to discuss it, because as you say, the lines can be blurry and they're dependent on the recipient. So if the conduct was unwelcome, that is what determines it. Again, it's also very difficult, probably with sexual harassment and sexual assault, because these are also things that take place in the private. But what I was going to say, there's also no particular way that a person who feels that the conduct is unwelcome should behave. They could be smiling because that's what society has taught them to do, or they have no other way of reacting. I mean, the flight, fight, freeze reactions are different for every particular person. So there's no particular way a victim or a recipient of such unwelcome conduct ought to behave.
At Center for Rights Education and Awareness, then, of course, one of the things that you do, clearly, even just from the name, is you create awareness. You spread education and awareness about these matters. What the law says, what individual rights are, and what when you cross the line. And then you also, I assume, support those that have been victims of
Indeed.
sexual violence.
Yes.
Now, what kind of support do you offer?
So we offer support in various ways. The first is when a victim or survivor comes to us through various ways. These are through the community. We also have a hotline or a physical visit to the office. One of the ways we want to places, we try to establish where they are since the act occurred. So if they have not gone to, for example, the police station, they have not gone to the hospital, we will accompany them there and ensure that they get the services that they need. We also give legal aid, free legal aid, and psychosocial support, because that is very important for the healing of the victim, so that they're able to
This is at the point
overcome the traumatic event, yes.
just soon after the event has taken place.
Yes.
Now,
or even way later, because, there's no limitation of time for reporting a sexual offense. So even if it happened 10 years ago, we will still see to what extent are we able to support you through the various services. Yes.
So when you talk about those ones that are clear, rape, okay, where there is clear rape, it's even supported by medical evidence that rape took place. What kind of assistance and support do you give?
So we will assist them in the, if they haven't gone to the police already, in the taking of their statements, and also throughout the court case, if they are willing to go through the court case, the criminal justice system, because it's not an easy decision. If they are willing, then we will accompany them to the court cases. We are able to offer psychosocial support along the case, because it can get quite tiresome. It's not easy to relive the events. So we'll follow them through. We will represent them in court whenever we are able to do as the victim's representative until the end of the life of the case.
If you look at the way societies are constructed, I'm talking about African societies, and you look at the role that the men have apportioned for women, and if you look at the way those societal norms and those cultural norms are justified, what becomes apparent is that the easy target for what we're now referring to as sexual violence, women and girls suffer disproportionately when it comes to these matters.
Indeed.
But then that is the consequence, that's the manifestation. But how do you identify, deal with, find ways of mitigating against the causes? What brings it about? Because in very many communities and in cultural settings, what we may consider to be assault, some people justify as being normal, and yet in my mind there's really nothing normal about it, but they justify it as being normal. How do you deal with these things?
Exactly. That's why I said we create awareness, and so we do it at various levels. Like what I'm doing today is part of creating awareness, where we discuss this normalized cultures that oppress and suppress women's rights. But we also do it as an organization at the community level. We are creating these conversations within the communities. We always have community activities where we are able to discuss with community members what cultures are they permitted, are they harmful to a particular group of people within the society.
And when you've understood what these communities do and why they encourage some of these abhorrent cultural activities, what are some of the things that you've heard that people have used to explain this violence? How do they justify it? Because there has to be some justification.
Of course, it's the normal, absurd things that we've had where, for example, a community will tell you that the way a man expresses love to his wife is through beating them. And even women sometimes, because of that societal ingraining, accept it that if my husband doesn't beat me, then he probably doesn't love me as much. So there's that, and just just weird things.
You see, it's weird, yes, but if they believe that to be so, and the person who's being violated believes it, then we do have a problem, because the very person who ought to perhaps take a stand against it supports it, because if they consider it to be normal, they'll support it.
They consider it to be normal because of what it has been taught to them. But I truly don't believe that they enjoy the pain that they get from the beatings or the other things that they are taken through widow cleansing in some parts of the country, and all these other discriminatory practices. So the premise first would be that to make them understand what you are going through is not normal, is a violation to you. And of course, it's not easy to make social change, is not easy, but once you tell them several times, then they're able to see how it is and explain the path to behavior change. Then they're able to see what they're going through is not normal, they don't enjoy it, and it shouldn't happen, and also the legal premises of it.
In your experience, how long does it take before communities actually get to understand this? A year, 2 years, 10 years, 5 years?
It's quite cyclic. I mean, it's also the things we have been dealing with as a country. We've been talking about corruption since I don't know when, and it has never changed. So that is also what makes it difficult, but there are also other factors that contribute to exacerbating sexual violence.
Why I ask the question is because there is a cadre of citizens who would perhaps be more recipient to some of these messages. They're called children.
Mm-hmm.
Because if children understand some of these things, essentially is the aspect of respect towards each other and towards gender, then you start nipping this problem in the bud at a very early age. Mm-hmm. But if it isn't, by the time people are grown up and they've accepted some of these norms, abhorrent as they are, then it becomes a really tall order trying to get them to turn around.
Completely agree. And so the thing is, we work with partners, and there are some partners who are better able to channel their energies and resources towards educating children.
The big issue, though, I see with this is children learn by observing.
Yes, they do.
Mm-hmm.
In truth, if you go to kindergarten, you will find teachers teaching children how to respect one another. Don't touch this, you don't touch mine, I don't touch yours. You see kids being taught how to do this.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then they leave that environment and they go and they find us adults behaving the way we behave.
Mm.
So as much as we are saying, let's teach the children, if the ones who are teaching the children just say it, but they don't practice it, is it going to work, City?
It is going to work. The reason why it will work is because these children will grow up. And when they do, if there is a foundation that was laid with this understanding, it'll be a reference point. In the absence of that, the negative influences are the ones which will take hold, and that's what will be their reference point. And you are 100% right, because the examples that are set within families sometimes negate these very positive things that they may learn in a school environment. But it is a starting point because it helps lay foundation. Because at that young age, you will find that the young learner listens to the teacher to the point where they will correct their parents and say, teacher said this. Yeah. Meaning, I've heard what you've said, but this is what the teacher said.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
So the teacher and what the teacher says does have an impact.
It truly does, but there's the monkey see and the monkey do.
Mm.
So we have to begin from both points. Both at the starting point where it's the children, but also with changing adult behavior.
Okay.
So there's the other end of it as well.
And that's the work that you have to do.
That is the work that we have to do.
That you do at Crow all the time.
Yes.
Well, at the same time, so you're creating awareness, you're coming up with programs to see that you avoid getting cases of sexual violence.
Yes.
And then when you get cases of sexual violence, you also now have to offer support.
Responding to it, yes.
Let's talk about more on the kind of support that you give, because you've mentioned something as you were talking about this. A victim comes to you, you are willing to help.
Yes.
You are also willing to walk the journey with them should they choose to pursue the criminal justice system. Mm-hmm. Now, I want to understand what that is, the should they choose.
Okay.
And how you come into the should they choose. I mean, how do you get to a point where you accept, okay, this person really does not want to go through with this, and it's okay. And in some cases, this person does not want to go through with this, but because they've been influenced and blah, blah, this and the other. All right? Just to understand at what point you make that determination. 29 minutes after 9. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back with this conversation shortly. Beatrice Nyeri is a strategic litigation advocate working at the Center for Rights, Education and Awareness, CRU Kenya. We're talking about protecting survivors of sexual violence as we continue marking 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. So there are very many things that we've been talking about. Discount this, discount the other.
Yes.
Win this, get the other. There's a discount for how much? 37,000?
37,500. So for this,
if you buy
the Z Flip 4, if you do that by the 7th of December, you get a discount of 37,500. That means you're only going to have to pay 112,500 shillings.
Mm-hmm. And if you go and buy Kiwi, you stand a chance of winning school fees worth 35,000 shillings plus 37,500. And then you walk to Two Rivers and you say, I'd like to buy a house at Two Rivers from Centum Real Estate, and you get a discount of 200,000 shillings.
You know what that's doing? What we're saying? Samsung and Kiwi are helping you buy a house.
Samsung and Kiwi are helping you buy a house at Two Rivers. Hiya.
Just do the maths.
Just do the math. 9:30. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
London Mulo DJ Absolute. When the gang is together,
got the sugar, got the spice.
Yorada. Yes.
I have missed you like hot hamburgers. Yeah?
Like hot hamburgers.
You know, bad boys give more money than you can count.
Hey, bad boys give more money than you can count. If it's fun, it's funky, it's fresh, you're definitely going to catch it here. I don't know what you do every day from 11 a.m. to 3 o'clock, but if I were you, I'd tune in to
Sugar and Spice only on 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
So if you say it's on, then it's on.
Yeah. All right, cloudy conditions in Nairobi this morning. Rain showers for most parts of the morning will continue. Highs of 24 and lows of 17. It's sunny at 19 in Nakuru. Highs of 26 and lows of 13. And we'll see highs of 22 and lows of 13 in a rainy Nyeri at 18. Mostly cloudy at 19 in Eldoret. Highs of 24 and 31 will be the high in a rainy Mombasa at 28. 29 and mostly cloudy in Malindi. Highs of 31. And it's 24 and sunny in Kisumu. 29 will be the high. We'll see highs of 28 in a sunny Kakamega at 25. It's raining at 21 in Kampala. It's raining at 29 in Dar es Salaam. 19 and sunny in Johannesburg. Highs of 26, and we'll see highs of 32 in a sunny Lagos now. It's sunny at 23 in Kinshasa. It's freezing at -2 in Beijing. 0 will be the high and lows of -8. Cloudy at 4 in Paris, and going to highs of 8, 9 will be the high in a cloudy London. And it's 5 degrees and partly cloudy in New York. We'll go to highs of 14.
Spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life.
All right, we're getting out of traffic hour according to the TikTok of the clock, but we're looking at heavy traffic that's right around Kamkunji, coming in from the eastern side of the city, and it's all then joining in the CBD. We're looking much better coming off of Thika Superhighway, but we're seeing some still on Kiambu Road, the dregs of Wednesday morning traffic, and coming out of Westlands also looking much better. Looks like traffic hour actually has more or less come to an end, but we'll deal with the last parts of it moving forward. Through the morning, talk to us on SpiceFM, KE on Twitter.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
All right, we continue the conversation.
Mornings.
A crime has occurred
Yes.
Somebody has been sexually violated.
Mhm.
They have even gone to the hospital and it has been confirmed they've got the record.
Mhm.
It's a crime.
Yes. By the way, the it's not just a crime because the hospital has confirmed. We have moved to a point where courts are able to accept the victim's testimony even without medical records.
Even without medical records.
Yes.
So a crime has taken place. At what juncture do you then say, all right, this person is willing to pursue it, this person is not willing to pursue it, so let it rest?
So over time, we have recognized that survivors have their own voice, they have their own agency, they have their own autonomy to decide on the circumstances of their life and their case. So as much as we appreciate this was a violation and there is recourse in law and probably a remedy, a survivor might choose to define justice differently from the legal justice that we would encourage them to pursue. So at the end of the day, the decision rests with them. It might not be the right time per the victim because the trauma sits with people differently. So they might not be able to pursue it. Again, the criminal justice system is not an easy place for victims and survivors. So if they choose not to pursue the criminal justice system, as at that point, we must recognize and appreciate their agency, their voice, and their ability to choose and their definition of justice and assist them through any other way to find healing.
To find healing and justice.
Indeed.
What if that person, the victim, is underage?
So for underage, we would really encourage that they pursue justice. And because mostly they are under the care of their parents, it will be the parents who would then ultimately make the decision, depending. But if they are adolescents, because of the requirement of the testimony, then at that point you must still recognize their agency. I mean, they might be very unwilling, and the consequences of forcing them to go through the criminal justice system might be as traumatizing as the incident itself.
I'm pursuing that because you'll recall there have been instances where civil society organizations and community-based organizations and communities have come out saying this happened to this person, but their parents or their guardians are pushing them and influencing that this case does not proceed.
Okay.
So are we saying that now we are treating those things differently? If a guardian says, look, would not want to pursue this.
So there's also that, because there must be a place for the law and legal agencies to come into the situation and look into it, because one of the other circumstances we've had is, for example, in defilement of children, which are the perpetrator is well known within the family. There's a family covering up for each other, and because it's an illegal activity, then there has to be intervention from law enforcement agencies, because that is aiding and abetting a crime. Yeah.
What if law enforcement what if administrative structures are involved? They went to a police station, they went to a chief, they went to a nyumba kumi, they went to elders, and the elders sat down and they said, all right, so it's the uncle. Yeah, we all know it's the uncle. And the uncle has confessed before the elders, and the uncle is facing some form of punishment from the elders. Is that okay?
No, it is not, because we encourage, due to the seriousness of sexual offenses, we want this should be settled by the courts and through the formal administrative system, formal justice administrative systems, because what ends up happening is that probably the uncle will be fined, and the fine will go to the parents or whoever it is. Of course, some of the people who are sitting through the mediation or arbitration or whatever will also benefit in some form. But what does it mean for that particular child victim? They don't get their justice. They are not involved in any way at all. They don't even know what happened. And you see, they are not treated as the victim. It is the parents then who will be the victim, and then so it is the incident is removed from them, yet they're the ones who underwent the violation.
As understandable as that is, if we look at the majority of these cases that we see, unfortunately, they happen within the context of families who unfortunately are economically disadvantaged. Mm-hmm. So by the time somebody is making this agreement, they're not seeing that. They're seeing that, all right, there's a possible settlement that might help us to deal with, these issues. Those traumatic issues, we'll deal with them. The likelihood of them even addressing them, is pretty low. We don't see as many cases amongst of this kind of settlement amongst families who have the wherewithal financially. Mm-hmm. They're going to go and push the full letter of the law or throw everything from the system at the perpetrator. How do you then deal, and I'm talking about practically now when we're talking about the advocacy with the lines within which you work, how do you deal with a situation like that? Where a mother or a father, as pained as they may be that their child has been violated in this manner, is looking at this monster of, responsibility that here, okay, somebody violated their child. And as terrible as it sounds, they're thinking, well, I can swap that for a little bit of reprieve when it comes to putting food on the table. How do you deal with that? Or how do you insist, on the other side, how do you insist that no, mom, dad,
this must go through.
This must go to court. How do you insist on that?
Okay, of course, it's very difficult for us to insist, but that is where the awareness work comes in, because if the community you live within does not accept those circumstances, as impoverished as they are, because you're all living together, you're suffering around food. I'm also suffering to put food on the table, but trading your child's violation is not the solution. So if that is acceptable at that particular community level, then they're also able to put some sort of pressure on the person. Remember, this person also remains within the community and is a danger to other children, because if he knows the only thing I will be doing is paying a few thousand shillings, then they are a danger to everyone in the community, in the society. You don't know which next person they will violate. So that is why communities must stand up against it. Also, one of the services that we offer is linking victims and survivors to shelters and safe spaces. So if really, really, truly the challenge is about putting food on the table, how about we put this child in a safe space where their interests and psychosocial support and healing and trauma may be taken care of in another space as you figure out, because before the violation you are still struggling to put food on the table. So you struggle to put food on the table while the child is away and they're getting help elsewhere.
The welfare of the child, yes, and the taking care of it is fundamental. And one lauds the steps that you take, but these so-called elders in these so-called communities hold sway. They are people who have power and they have influence. Do you have programs which allow you to work with these people? Because what you've just discussed is how many societies deal with shame and how they deal with stigma.
Indeed.
Okay, now we may think they're ignoring it, but they have ways in which they deal with it. The coping mechanism and the psychology behind it is powerful. And if going to court means going against these norms, what you may end up doing is ostracizing that person from the community, that they belong to.
And we don't want to do that.
Yes, so my question, how then do you work with these elders in getting them? Because they are not just gatekeepers. They are not just the opinion shapers. They are the custodians of the norms that these societies function with. So they are critical partners in whatever you do. So how do you work with them?
Yes. Are you asking because you're an elder?
No, I'm asking because
he's old.
No, that one is a beautiful question, because I ask because I have worked in fields where such discussions took place. And in the absence of including these people, you went nowhere.
Exactly.
The best of intentions, the best of plans, you didn't just hit a rock. You are listened to, but nothing happens.
Indeed.
They'll pay attention to you, nothing happens.
Exactly.
Yes.
So that is important, and we have recognized that in our work. And when we decide, whichever community we decide to work with, or our resources allow us to work with, we must map out the various components of the community. So, for example, the gatekeepers, the elders, have a great influence, and you must work with them separately or differently than how you work with, for example, religious leaders, because those are also important opinion shapers in the community, whichever community we go to. So we approach them differently, and we have to discuss this with them because we are alive to the fact that they are the ones who shape either the opinions of the community, the cultures, the norms. And if they take up your message and see the importance of protection and ending sexual violence within their communities, then the uptake with the rest of the community is much easier. They're a good entry point.
You know, there's this assumption that elders in a community of necessity are men. It's not necessarily true.
It's not.
In fact, very few communities would only have men.
Yes.
As elders.
As elders, yes.
Yes. But the thing is that they, within those elders, they probably...
There's a hierarchy.
There's a hierarchy, and also they are constituted differently. So you will find the men constituted differently and the women constituted differently. That's why I said whichever community we approach, we try to understand how does this community organize itself, what is the strata within the community, so that we know which discussions to have with which component of the community.
Can I ask if you could just walk us through maybe in a minute or so how you approach these communities to get to the point where you are having these productive discussions about how it is they can change these lifelong traditions?
Now, unfortunately, you're taking me out of my element because that is done mostly by my colleagues.
By some other people?
Yes,
so
my
we should
colleagues,
bring them
but
here the next
mostly
time.
I do litigation work in the court. And
the reason why I ask you this is because even with the litigation work that you do, if the law is not tuned and trimmed to the point where it can be consumed effectively by these communities, again, it will not be useful.
True.
And so you do understand the processes because you are the one who has to apply the law in these circumstances. So you're not totally ignorant.
No, I'm not to say that I'm totally ignorant, but I don't want to speak
you don't
as
want to
an
step into
expert.
someone else's.
Yes, where I'm not. The strengths are better light there. I would.
They have the strategies that they use to
Yes.
approach a community.
Exactly.
Which you may not necessarily speak of
I will,
right here.
Yes, I will massacre them, and I don't want to do that to their beautiful work.
So even when they have a practice which breaks the law, you will not know that they've broken the law.
No, I do know my colleagues do. and they operate within a particular framework, so I'm confident that they don't break the law as they do the education.
Right. What is the understanding from what you've seen and looking at the side at the place of victims? And I think we've passed the point where we're saying just girls, because I mean we're seeing horror stories of things that are happening to boys and girls. What is the understanding from a victim point of view of what should be, what is allowed and what is not allowed on their person? Even as this advocacy continues, I think it is a monumental part that they have an understanding of, look, this was a violation, or this is what I cannot agree or allow to happen to me. Because we can talk about litigation, we can talk about the judicial process, we can talk about security agencies, but at the same time, there's a strength that lies in an individual who then would be able to allow or disallow certain things, be vocal about it.
Okay, I think first it's very difficult to place the responsibility on a victim or a potential victim,
not even responsibility,
to disallow certain kinds of behavior. I think one of the beginning points should be educating people to respect other people's rights. Don't touch this. Don't give personal space. You see how people even queue in banks, and then someone is just, even after COVID, people are really just breathing down your neck. We don't understand the concept of personal space, but what he was speaking to on educating, and he was speaking to as well on educating people, like the privacy of your body, and nobody should touch, nobody should see, nobody should put their other things into you. That's where it begins, and rightfully speaking, you can only begin it as a child. Yeah.
Do we find that the caregivers, I mean, I think, because this is holistic education here, do we find that caregivers, whether it's parents or, senior members of family, do we find that that conversation is gravitating towards this protection? Because it's important. The work that you do, the individuals that you come into contact with on a regular basis, is there this understanding by them as well?
There should be an understanding in our teaching from parents to caregivers and all that. And I would dare say it's a bit of neglect of parental responsibility when you're not educating your children on what should be allowed and what should not be allowed to them as their parent and as their caregiver, and also teaching them the boundaries and encouraging them to speak out when they feel that their boundaries are violated. Because I was looking at a conversation last week where many, I guess they're men at this point, were saying that some of their first sexual encounters were with their caregivers at home, probably nannies or people who were assisting with the domestic work at home. And those were the people who they had their first sexual encounter with. And you realize these were violations because they were children at the point, and whoever was doing this was an adult. But they did not have a healthy way of discussing that with parents. Of course, it's a much bigger conversation with regard to parenting and parental approaches and creating a safe environment for nurturing your child. Yeah.
When you go to the community, are there some communities that look at the work of civil society as interference with culture, interference with the norms, interference with the general cohesion within a community, and so they look at you as enemies?
Well, I think we have quite moved past that because the communities are appreciating the role of various stakeholders. So, for example, as much as the chief interferes or will stop you from doing certain things that you want to do, you have come to accept their role in the community, that they have a place. And similarly, the communities are also embracing civil society and all that. And not only that, they themselves are organizing into community-based organizations, and they themselves saying that this particular aspect of our culture or practice within this community is not acceptable to us. We feel uncomfortable about it, and we're beginning to discuss about it as a community. So you find that when you're coming as a civil society organization, then you're just coming to supplement and probably offer a little more skill and knowledge to those community-based organizations that are against certain practices.
So in cases where you are supporting a victim of sexual violence in a community, you've mentioned instances where you have to help this person move out of the community.
Yes.
But the trauma is lifelong. How do you take them through that journey of healing? And for how long? At what point do you say pesa yetu imeisha? Dona pesa yake alisema tufanye only 2 weeks. The rest you sort yourself out. Or how long do you walk the journey with the victim?
Again, it's dependent, and it's a bit taking me out of my element because we have psychosocial experts. I think next time you should invite our whole office so that everyone can speak to their part. But we try and stretch it to wherever they are able to participate in life meaningfully without the severe effects of whatever traumatic event it is. Of course, we can't give a timeline of like 2 months or whatever, because healing is not linear, and psychosocial experts have that understanding. So we are able to support them and leave the channel open to whenever they feel overwhelmed, they can always come back for that psychosocial support. Again, as an organization, we understand that. So the onus is also on us to continue seeking out other partners who are able to fund our work so that it is ongoing. There's no stoppage at a particular point.
There have been calls, I believe the date was 2026. I mean, even as we're looking at 16 days of activism against gender-based violence and looking at different forms of gender-based violence ending by 2026 in Kenya, former President Uhuru Kenyatta did make that declaration. From what you've seen, is there a leaning or at least a gravitation towards that direction? Will we see in the next because that's where we are, in the next 3 years or so, these horror stories that we're seeing on a daily basis, these cases that wind up in court, these families who are having to make decisions about whether their children remain abused or they take some money. Do you see it, that now that we've put a date on it, do you see it
unfortunately
ceasing or coming to an end?
Unfortunately, and realistically, I don't see it coming to an end within 3 years, because these are practices that are deeply ingrained, that have various drivers that have been there for years on end, decades and decades. I don't see it practically possible to end it by 2026. But I'm happy to be jobless if it means gender-based violence will have ended by 2026. And the reason why the despair is even more on my end is like observing what has been happening in the courts recently, where we have the Sexual Offences Act that prescribes certain sentences for certain sexual offences. So what the courts have done is to declare those sexual offences unconstitutional, and therefore giving discretion to judges to decide which sentences pass. So the Sexual Offences Act prescribes the minimum, and then there is room for the judicial officer to wiggle to whatever ceiling they could decide. It depends on the particular crime. Yeah.
Remember, there's an argument, not an argument, but a discussion. Like, we even invited Justice Luka Kimaru here, who was really, really strong on this, and saying, I mean, if you are saying that this is an absolute minimum, as long as I find, yes, an offense was committed, I must sentence this person this number of years going upwards, you are not giving me, you're basically controlling the judge, and you're not giving me the opportunity to look at the circumstances. Because he was arguing there are some circumstances where, yes, there were 4 people brought to court over a sexual offense. I have listened to the evidence. I have determined that person A and B were more directly involved than person C. I shouldn't be able to punish person C the same way as I'm punishing A and B.
What about the matter where you have people who are referred to as minors, and then someone reaches a certain age of maturity, and then you have these minimum and the maximum issues, and so the issue of consent is not considered at all in this particular instance. So now the judge doesn't have much leeway. You can even understand the circumstances, but the leeway isn't there. Recently we had a very interesting case that happened where now this particular office of the court decided to look at this thing very differently. A 16-year-old girl and someone who he was 18 years old, or is it older?
No, he was older.
He was older.
In Isiolo.
In Isiolo. Yes.
So it's quite challenging, but I find it difficult to understand why, particularly for sexual offenses, the judicial officers want that much room to wiggle because we already have...
There are mandatory
what we
minimums
have-
in other offences.
Yes, but this is just the floor. They have a lot to wiggle through before they get to
They're
the
arguing
ceiling.
against the floor.
Yes.
Exactly. However, we came to the floor
because
of a certain journey that we had walked through, recognizing the seriousness of sexual offenses, the violation that they occasion to the human person, and that they're a form of discrimination
Beatrice,
against women and girls.
You will come, we discuss mandatory minimum as a topic.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Sindio?
Sure.
Thank you very much for coming. Beatrice Nyeri is a strategic litigation advocate at the Center for Rights, Education and Awareness. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Asanteni sana.
And thank you for tuning in to Kenya's biggest conversation. I'll not be in tomorrow and Friday. Silwambia mimi naenda from here. Fuka boda.
Salimia nani?
Salimia
Madam.
Suluhu. Madam Samia Suluhu Hassan.
Salimia,
Yeah. I've been invited by the International Commission of Juries Kenya. They're having their annual conference in Arusha.
Well done.
And we'll talk about the work that we've been doing here in campaigns.
Sup your life.
Have a lovely day. Have a lovely rest of the week. Good morning. It's 10 a.m.
Good morning, this is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. President William Ruto is this morning expected to launch the Hustler Fund that